Yeah, I got presented with this opportunity. I was like, let me try it out. I got 100, sold it. That was the first time that I had made money, like for real. With the weed, I was breaking down things, making hundreds, hundreds, spending the hundreds. It was nothing. That was the first time I made like 10 grand in a month. I went from having like $600 to having 10 grand in a month. And then I was like, whoa.
Was he your plug?
At that time, but then I ended up becoming his plug. But back then, they had just flooded the South Florida with it. It was all coming from China. We had never seen it before. Nobody knew the difference, and it was cheap as fuck. So that's when, it really boomed. And that's when the Mali invasion came. That's when things started going crazy back in like 2009, 2010. My friend sends me a picture of the front of the Miami Herald, and it says Mali invasion. And in the picture, I see my old plug, my old boss, and two other guys that I knew. There were a picture of like 10 different people. And it said Mali invasion.
FBI, open up!
The FBI swarming a Miami house and taking a man into custody in the area of Southwest.
So say goodnight to the bad guy.
The agency says the 28-year-old was picked up after the grand jury indicted him and 5 others.
This took a while. Welcome, my brother. Welcome to Honor Among Thieves.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah. We used to talk about this in prison, and here we are. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were waiting for the right time, right? The
timing is everything.
Yeah, it always appears, and here we are. 10 months after I've been out, or 10 months since I've been free, and I'm ready, bro.
I'm excited, man. You have even me that, you're one of my best friends. I didn't dive deep into your story intentionally because I wanted to do it this way. And I'm excited because you have a lot of layers to it that I'm really excited to explore and like peel back and see what way I take it. You know what I mean? So especially, I've had a lot of drug stories on, but yours is unique,
Yeah,
so.
Unique to say the least.
So
fucked up, unique, amazing,
right.
All in one.
It's the first time I have like a Mali party type story. And then obviously your prison story is pretty extensive and I'm a part of it. So excited to delve deep into that. But let's get into it. So
let's go.
You grew up, born and raised in Miami, right?
Yeah. Born and raised in Miami, from Venezuelan parents, but born and raised in Miami my whole life in Dade County. And I was an athlete my whole life. I played sports since I was 3 years old. My main sport was hockey. And I started playing hockey I started skating when I was 2, playing hockey when I was 3. Elementary school, I played a bunch of sports.
Odd sport to pick up in Miami.
Yeah, you're right. But my parents actually played hockey. They played roller hockey.
Okay.
Yeah, they played roller hockey with like a bunch of other parents. And then the kids started playing and we were all like little 3 and 4-year-olds. We all started playing roller hockey like in the back of like a Walmart or like a Target. They used to put up the little pads. We used to play hockey, and then that, evolved into other sports. When I was in elementary school, I was just an active kid. I grew up on the streets in a sense, like not like the crazy streets, but in the streets of my neighborhood and playing sports all the time, manhunt, soccer, baseball, whatever, basketball, whatever we could. And then, I correlated to school. Elementary school, middle school, high school. Middle school, I played like 7 sports. High school, I played like 5. And then high school is when I kind of, deviated off course.
We'll get there. So when you lived a pretty average life as far as like growing up. Like you had good parents.
Yeah, well, my parents are divorced. So right when I was about like 3 or 4 years old, my dad left the house. And I grew up with my mom. But it was still good, it was functional. She showed us a lot of love. And I had one brother at that time. Then I have my younger brother now, who's 12 years younger than me. But I grew up with them, my mom and 2 brothers. And my mom was working a lot. My 2 other brothers, they're kind of opposite of me. So they're more like indoors at the house, watching, video games. I'm playing video games or watching TV or whatever. And I was, outside, a little more of the social person, in the group. But other than that, everything seemed fine,
Did sports keep you out of trouble? Like you never really got in trouble as a kid?
No. As a younger kid, no, I never got in trouble. Sports was my life. My mom did the best she could to work and support the 3 of us. and also just take me to sports every single day. She would pick me up from school, from what sports practice, and then take me to hockey practice, and that was like my life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting how like stories always vary. You know, I find a lot of stories that it was like instant. You know, they grew up around criminals and they took that, it was like inevitable. But then other ones, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and that's always cool to kind of explore.
Well, the neighborhood I grew up in was kind of fucked up.
All right.
You know,
So we'll get into that. So you mainly sports that kept you busy. What was your first exposure into like the neighborhood and like the street and other kids that were like up to no good and that kind of stuff?
well, our neighborhood was full of kids. There was a bunch of kids. It was just, a kid-filled neighborhood. And we're all playing in the streets, like I said, manhunt, sports, playing games. And then the older kids in the neighborhood, at one point they were also just playing, but when they got to a certain age, they all started, smoking pot, selling pot, stealing, started, a little bit more in like that type of lifestyle. And then little by little, it started trickling down to the younger kids.
So these were older kids that were like what, in high school?
Maybe a couple years older than me. I was like in the middle. Like there was the majority of the kids there were either 2 years younger than me or 2 years older than me. There was only like one other guy in my neighborhood that was my age. I was like right in the middle. You know what I mean? Or like 2 to like 5 years older than me. It was just the older kids and then the younger kids.
So how old were you at that time?
When that started happening, I was probably like 12, 13, but that's not when I got into it. But that's already when things
But that was like your first exposure.
Yeah, seeing it going around in the neighborhood. And then me specifically, 15 years old, was when I smoked for the first time. And it wasn't even in my neighborhood. It was at a party. Yeah, I was just at a party. Some of the older kids, actually, one of the older kids was one of the kids from my neighborhood. That was at that party. That was in my high school. They offered me to smoke, and I smoked. And but that was it. I didn't really do it again after that. I kind of got a little paranoid and stuff.
That's funny.
Yeah, I didn't really like it.
So I remember, we're the same age, and I remember in high school there being an obscene amount of drugs. Like drugs were so easily accessible in high school.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, I remember it was all kinds of pills and weed was like everywhere. Ecstasy was huge. So was it like that in your high school? Like was there drugs where they were really accessible or not really?
Yes and no. I mean, every high school, but then I'm a couple years older than you, right?
Maybe like 1 or 2 years older.
Yeah, I think I'm a couple years. So when I first got to high school, I mean, obviously it's always a thing. Every year, every generation is a thing, but it wasn't as popular. Then once I became like a senior or like even a junior and a senior, all the freshmen coming in had all done a bunch of drugs. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because when I was in middle school, it wasn't really a thing. There was like one guy who smoked, one guy who had sex, it wasn't like crazy. But then by the time I was a senior, all the kids come in were all smoking, doing drugs, having sex, all these crazy things. I was like, whoa. It was a lot.
That's funny. Yeah, high school is always that pivotal moment. I noticed like right around that teenage years is like when things kind of like open up and you're exposed to the world, or at least to that side of the world where maybe you were kind of sheltered and then your eyes are opened,
For sure. I never thought I would, again, playing sports my whole life. I even had a point in my life where I wanted to be a cop or like a detective or an investigator or like something like that.
That went the other way.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely
That's funny.
did.
You went to, where'd you go to high school?
Killian, Miami Killian Senior High.
Killian. Yeah, South Kendall and like the South was always like different than the rest of Miami. It was.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I remember.
In a zone.
I was a kid that kind of grew up everywhere. I didn't really stay in one spot, so I got to, I was like in Hanley Gardens, and I was in Carroll City, and I was in Miami Lakes, and I was in all these different places.
But for high school, you stayed in Coleman, right?
Yeah, I was going, but I lived in all those different places, so I got to experience different parts of the city. So I always thought that like Southwest Miami was cool because that's like, to me, that's Miami. That's like all Hispanic people.
That's what we say. But then when we go other places, we tell them we live in Kendall or whatever. They're like, bro, you don't live in Miami. You live deep south.
Yeah. They're like, no, I'm from Wynwood. That's Miami. And I said, bro, Wynwood.
My favorite is when people say they're from Miami and they're from Broward.
Oh, my God.
We got so many Broward people and even sometimes Palm Beach people repping Miami.
Right. Oh, I'm from Miami. We're in Miramar. Oh, Miramar. That's not Miami, bro. Get out of here.
But it's an easy place to reference.
For sure.
Especially if you're like somewhere else that's not South Florida.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So So let's talk about the tail end of high school. What are you wanting to do with your life?
So, well, I got into, selling my junior year, which was the second half
So
of
in high school is when you started selling drugs?
Yeah.
Okay. What'd you start with?
Pot. So what happened was, my sophomore year, I smoked for the first time. It was, it was fun. It was cool, whatever. I got a little paranoid. Then my junior year, I tried it again with one of my best friends at the time, who's still one of my best friends now, a lifelong best friend. And we both tried it and we just started smoking, because by that time it was a lot more popularized, especially in my neighborhood. Like all the kids in my neighborhood were starting to do it. And I started smoking with my best friends. And then literally it probably took less than a month from when I started smoking until I started selling because I didn't have money to buy weed.
So you're like, fuck it, let me
Yeah,
sell.
I didn't have any money to buy weed. And then actually my friend the older guy who I smoked with for the first time when I was 15, he lived in my neighborhood and he was a supplier. So I was good friends with him and his brother and stuff. And he offered to just front me, so he would front me a little quarter ounce. I got the quarter ounce, just divvy it up, sell enough just so I can smoke the profit. And like that was just
lesson number 2: don't get high, don't supply. Come on, man.
I mean, you're right. But to me, it wasn't about the money.
Yeah, it was just about.
I never got into it for the money. For me, it was just a lifestyle, and just, I was a young kid who liked to get high. And again, too, because it was a thing in the neighborhood. I grew up, playing sports. I was very team oriented, friend oriented. Grew up with my friends. I always had little groups of friends, so everyone was doing it. I kind of was like part of the group doing it.
Right.
And so yeah, high school. Once I started selling in high school, I was a pretty popular kid. I played a bunch of sports. I was in with a lot of different crowds. So once I started selling weed, I like boomed. It kind of like went 0 to 100 really quick. I went from the quarter to a half ounce to an ounce to quarter pound, half pound, all that type of stuff within like a year.
Really?
Yeah.
So you go from just making enough to wanting to smoke to like making a living?
I mean, a living, I wouldn't say. I'm still in high school. So, I mean, whatever I was making was still to spend on me and my
party.
friends. Yeah, exactly. I was in high school. I wasn't like saving money. And yeah, I was just selling. I was even selling to security guards and stuff.
That's funny. You sold to security guards.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It was an epic last 2 years of my high school.
Okay. Did you finish high school?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I was good. I was a good student. I averaged, I think, like a 3.2 or something like that. I mean, or 3.6. I don't know. I was a good student. I took AP classes and stuff. And then my senior year, when I started getting more into like that scene, because junior year was like the beginning. I started up, whatever. My senior year, when I really started getting more into the selling, and actually my senior year, I took a program. It was a job release program, a work release program. They would let you off.
OJT, what was it?
Yeah, something like that. OJT, a work release program.
On the job training, yeah.
So you would leave school at like, you had different set times, 10:30, 11:30, whatever. Leave school and go to work. So me and another good friend of mine at that time, we both took the class and we would leave school at like 10 or 11 a.m. to go to work. But within like a month or two, we stopped working at that place. And we had one of our good friends was the manager at the place. So we kind of kept it going. We didn't tell our school that we were not working. And we didn't tell the school that we were not working. So we would just leave school every day at 10:30 and then just go smoke weed, go hang out, do whatever we wanted. And that was like the whole like second half of the year.
Of your senior year in high school?
Of my senior year in high school.
That's a great way to end high school.
Yeah, my whole, and then it's funny because our teacher, the teacher for that class, pulled us into the end because, so our friend was the manager at the place. They have to like check in to make sure you're working.
Right.
So they had his number. So they'd always call him to make sure we're working, and he would sign us off and say we're working, everything's good. But the teacher was supposed to also go in every like month or two
and
to do
check
checks.
to see if you're working.
Yeah, but they weren't. So at the end of the year, he did like an end of the year check, and he saw we hadn't been working there since like January, like February. And he pulled us both to his office separately and stuff, and he had like talks with us. He's like, you can get suspended for this or expelled or all these things. And he just gave us like this whole like life lesson talk. And he's like, just don't do this again. We're like, all right, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to graduate in 2 months.
Exactly.
Whatever.
So it didn't really matter much.
Okay. So By the end of high school, how much weight are you pushing?
Not much, quarter pound, half pound, nothing crazy. I mean, it wasn't really till after high school where I started
weekly?
no.
Not even?
Yeah, I would go to high school with like a half ounce,
Okay.
and sell that in a day or two. I would just post up in the parking lot. I would literally, man, it's so crazy how reckless you can be when you're young,
Right.
Because I would just drive to school with a half ounce of weed under my seat, my scale, everything under my seat. I'd pull up to the parking lot, park, put the weed, weigh it out. People would just come to my car
Bro, that's
before
funny.
school. And then, what do you want? A gram? Here you go. What do you want? Boom. While I'm also hitting my bowl. The bell rang. Put it all in and just go to class. High
That's
as fuck.
funny, bro.
Yeah.
The dumb shit we do when we were kids, bro.
For real. Like, for real. It's crazy because it got to a point in my life where even like buying a 10-piece of weed, I was like, oh shit, where are the cops? Are they here? Are they following us?
Totally different.
But back then, you're reckless, you're young and just living.
Right. So at this point in life, you don't even really have an idea of what you want to do. You're just kind of like living day to day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got swept away with that lifestyle. You're 16, 17 years old in high school, making money, partying. I mean, not crazy money, but at that age, you know what I mean?
I would assume you're like the cool guy.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hook everybody up and
Oh, yeah, that's one thing about me. I never slacked anybody. I never robbed from anybody. I always would hook people up, because for me, it was just more to do it, to live my lifestyle and to, supply people with good stuff and hook people up.
all right. So what happens after high school, after you graduate?
So graduate, I actually barely graduated. I barely graduated. It was like I was doing really good in high school until like the end of high school. I started getting lazy. The whole thing I told you, I started leaving early. That.
I'm assuming you're not playing sports at all at this point.
No, yeah, I was. So in high school, volleyball was my main sport.
Okay.
I was the captain of the high school volleyball team, Killian. And in my junior year, we went to states.
Oh, okay.
We placed third place in states. And then my senior year, me and 3 of my boys on the team, we actually came out on the front page of the Miami Herald for the sports section. We were the #1 volleyball team in Miami-Dade. And we had an amazing team, but we were all a bunch of party animals.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's fucked up. But and then that senior year, so the second half of that senior year, when I was leaving early, I would still have to go back to school after school to practice.
Right.
But our minds just weren't there, We ended up going to regionals, and in regionals we lost to Southwest, and Southwest ended up winning the state championship. So we lost to the state champs. But I feel like we could have done it,
You think you would have been a pro athlete if you've never started selling drugs? In some sport?
Yes and no, because I feel like I could have been a pro athlete if I chose a different sport. I ended up choosing the sports that you need kind of like height for.
Right.
Hockey, basketball, and volleyball were my best sports. And those are all sports that, you kind of need to be at least like 6 foot.
Fair enough.
But I had the skill. I mean,
Right.
you've been around me for a while. I mean, sports was my thing.
Right.
If I were to probably just focused all my attention into like soccer or even baseball is a little more lenient with that, or just something like that for sure. But I spread myself too thin, I got really good at 10 sports.
You also got really good at selling drugs,
Yeah.
which kind of deters you. So,
Yeah, no, for sure. That definitely took me off course.
all right.
But yeah, so high school, I ended up, I did graduate, like I said, by the thread. Like even I took AP English my senior year, and I had to like do a like essay at the end to like pass the class because I was failing. Like
Right.
it kind of just, but I passed. I graduated, and then I even had a Bright Future scholarship to any college in the state of Florida, but I didn't even apply because I was so locked into selling drugs.
All right. So once you graduate high school, where does do you intentionally have the intention of saying, all right, I have more time on my hands, I'm done with school, I'm gonna sell more drugs, or does that just kind of happen organically?
Well, after high school, I actually went to Miami-Dade.
Okay.
So I kept going to school, but as soon as I graduated, I moved out of my mom's house. I'm a September baby. My birthday's in September. So I graduated high school. I was still 17 years old. And then at 17, I think it was like by the end of the summer, one of my best friends at that time, you're always going to hear me say like my best friend at that time because I was kind of like that. I was a drifter
Right.
in a sense. I drifted from friend group to friend group, you know, best friend to best friend in a specific era of my life. So my best friend at that time was 21. He was someone who was in the volleyball team. When I was in the volleyball team, he was just older than me, and we remained friends. And actually, I was his pot dealer. So we remained friends, we remained cool. And then he wanted to move out of his house. He was 21, I was 17, about to turn 18. And obviously I didn't have credit, I couldn't sign for anything, but he could. And he was getting in arguments with his mother. Things at the house were kind of rough. So I offered, hey, let me put up the money and we'll move out. He's like, all right, cool. So we got an apartment right off Kendall, and that's when I started like really selling pot. Like that's when I really started like selling weed, like, you know, the trap life.
Okay, so at this point, like you're barely 18, you just graduated high school, you move out on your own. What kind of like tell me about like how does it progress? Like you were just pushing quarter pounds and that kind of stuff, but so how does it?
In the beginning, yeah, from then we get the apartment, you know, I'm getting, you know, quarter pounds at a time, sometimes half pounds, breaking it down, setting a little bit of weight, nothing crazy. And I was still going to school. I was going to Miami-Dade College. I got my associates there. I did like that 2.5 years there. And so yeah, but I had left my house and I kind of like wasn't even really talking to my family much either. I was just so focused on that lifestyle. You know, I was in the apartment there for only like a year and a half. But that year and a half was really just selling and partying, you know. Because like I said, for me, the selling wasn't more about the money. It was more about just the hanging out with my friends, just living that lifestyle. So I was on a daily basis selling. You know, I had like 2 phones. You know, living that type of like trap life. You know, people would just come in and out of my apartment. It was reckless as fuck. But you know, at that time, you're just kind of living recklessly and blindly. Is there
A big like by the end of that year, is there a big difference in how much drugs you're selling?
No,
or not really.
No, yeah, because I wasn't looking to like.
No, I know, but the natural progression is you're not living with your parents. You don't have school, so you have more time in your hands.
But for that, you need to start saving. You need to save more to get more and selling more.
And you were just like partying your ass off.
Oh, okay. I'm not partying my ass off. Like there would go times that I'm with my friends playing video games and smoking, because I smoked a lot at that time of my life.
Right.
You know, I was one of those people who just smoked from the second I woke up to the second I went to sleep. You know, I'd smoke before my hockey games. I would go to the gym, take a little break to go smoke, go back to the gym. Like, it was just the lifestyle. And then I had like a little group of friends that were hanging out with me all the time. We were playing Call of Duty. Sometimes we would just stay up all night playing Call of Duty. And so I didn't really elevate, because I wasn't trying to elevate, you know. Like, I was busy. You know, I would sell out. I would get and sell out in a day or two. Like, but the profit I made was just to live.
Right.
You know, I wasn't saving up so I can buy more, save up to buy more, save up to buy more. You know, the normal thing that it takes to kind of like level up.
Right.
I wasn't really doing that.
Right. All right. So at the end of that year, so what are you, 18 at this point?
So yeah, well, I mean, I graduated 17, but I turned 18 September. So I was 18 right when I moved out, pretty much. I had just turned 18. I'm there for about a year and a half. I switched apartments in the middle of that. You know, some stuff had happened. And then I ended up moving to Gainesville.
Gainesville, okay.
Yeah.
Is that like, from what I've heard, Gainesville basically is like a super crazy party town because of the University of Florida?
Gainesville, Tallahassee. I mean, people talk about it all the time. It's definitely, it's a college town based around the university.
What made you want to move over there? Just you heard about the parties?
One of my main customers was a guy from Broward. And he and his friend were going to move to Gainesville to just go sell pot over there and live and go to school. So it was actually before I had finished college. I hadn't got my associates yet. I went to Santa Fe over there. It's like the community college over there.
Okay.
So I went over there. Well, my friend had asked me if I wanted to move. And then at that time I was dating someone and she didn't like it. But, you know, I was just like a kind of go with the flow type of guy. And I wanted to change, you know. I'd been in Miami so long. I was like, fuck it. Let me try it out. So I moved to Gainesville. I was there like in 2009 or something like that. I was there for about a year, not even. I would have probably stayed there a little longer, but the 2 guys that I moved with, they didn't like it. They were homesick. They wanted to come back. I enjoyed it. You know, I like change. You know, I like going to different places, meeting different people, different scenery. But when they moved back, I ended up moving back with them. And it's not like business had boomed or anything, you know. We moved up there, sold a little pot here and there, but it was mainly just living that little cottage life, going to school, going out, having fun. Then we moved back. And then that's when I have spent some time back in my mom's house.
Okay.
A few months back in my mom's house before another business opportunity had presented itself.
All right. Now we're getting to the good part.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a level up part.
So you go back to your mom's house, and then walk me through it. So what happens?
All right. So I go back to my mom's house, and then obviously I start reconnecting with, people that I had been, talking to, you know what I mean? People that I had been selling with before I left. And one of my boys, he was asking me if I wanted to sell Molly. Yeah. And I had never sold Molly before. Obviously, I had taken Molly before. You know, I kind of went into that festival scene like in 2007, 2008.
Was this around the time EDM boomed? Like
it was before.
In the US?
It was the same year that it started booming, like in 2009.
Yeah.
2009 is when the Molly invasion happened in Miami.
Okay. Like that's when Tiesto started making music with American rappers and all that.
I don't know the timeline for that.
Well, I remember though, it was a big thing. All the American artists started making EDM music, and it was a huge thing, you know. But okay, so you get presented with Molly.
Yeah, I get presented with this opportunity, and I was like, let me try it out. You know, he said the money was way better than weed, and I'm like, all right, fuck it, let me try it out. So I got 100, and I sold out. And then this was actually right before one of the ultras. So ultra for me through those years was a big thing. I used to go to ultra.
That must have been easy to sell all that shit.
Yeah, I used to go to ultra every single year. From 2007 to 2014, I went every year. I went to 7 or 8 ultras straight every single year. That's nuts. So it was before 2010 ultra, 9 or 10, I can't remember, that he presented me this opportunity. I got 100, sold it. I ended up, that was the first time that I had made money, for real. You know, with the
real
weed,
money.
The weed, I was breaking down things, making hundreds, hundreds, selling spending the hundreds. It was nothing. That was the first time I made 10 grand in a month. I went from having $600 to having 10 grand in a month. And then I was like, whoa.
Now we're talking.
What the fuck?
I think I found my calling in life.
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And then I moved out of my mom's house, obviously, because I wasn't going to stay there again. I was there for a few months. Then I went, we had gotten a 4-bedroom house in Kendall. Me, that guy who presented the opportunity, and then another friend of mine who was also a dealer. 3 dealers in one house.
Was he your plug?
At that time, but then I ended up becoming his plug.
It's funny how the tables turned.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not the best idea to move in with a bunch of other drug dealers, but.
Definitely not. All right, so before we move on, I'm interested in okay, so when you say 100, is it 100 little because Molly was in powder, so
yeah. Well, back then, it was Molly. People were selling it as real MDMA, but it wasn't. You know, the Molly going around in that time, and probably still to this day, is methadone, methadrone, different type of chemicals that give you similar feelings. Give you the upper feeling, the ecstasy type feeling, but it's not the same. But back then, they had just flooded the South Florida with it. It was all coming from China. We had never seen it before. Nobody knew the difference, and it was cheap as fuck. So that's when, it really boomed. And that's when the Molly invasion came. That's when things started going crazy back in 2009, 2010.
Sick. Yeah.
So I say 100, it was usually coming capsules, just 100 pack of capsules already filled.
And how much would each capsule, how much would you sell a capsule for?
Well, it depends if I sold it broken down or in weight.
Right.
Let's say back then I would get 100 for $250, or $300. That's $3 a pop. And then I would sell it, if in weight, I would probably sell it for $5 a pop. Or if I'm selling them individual, $10, or $15, depending on who it is.
So you can triple or quadruple your money.
Yeah.
That's
no, and it was a hustle in the beginning. In the beginning, I made most of that by breaking it down. Kind of like the same thing I was doing with the weed. Selling that, I was doing it with the Molly. But the Molly exactly was a lot more, because weed back then was expensive. Weed now is cheap as hell.
Because it was still legal.
Yeah,
now
weed
it's legal,
now is cheap as hell. You can get a pound now for I mean, I wouldn't know, but back then a pound was like $3,000 to $4,000.
All right, guys, taking a quick break from Honor Among Thieves podcast to bring you a word from our sponsor, and that is Federal Prison Tips. At Federal Prison Tips, we help people navigate the justice system from indictment, re-entry, everywhere in between. Whether you're a loved one trying to get relief for someone that you love that is in federal prison, you are currently in federal prison, or about to go to federal prison, we can definitely help you. Everything from plea mitigation, sentencing mitigation, PRSR challenges, anything about guidance while you're in prison, actually what to expect if you're a first timer and have never been there. Whether this is your second case, third case, you haven't quite learned your lesson yet. Either way, we can help you with everything that has to do with federal prison. Good time, FSA, second chance credits, getting designated to a facility. Any issues you might be having within the federal prison system, we can definitely help. Honor Among Thieves podcast. Mention that you saw us on the podcast and you'll get special rates only given to those who listen to the podcast. Again, 407-434-0175, extension 7. Hit us up, federalprisontips.com. Contact us. Let them know you heard about them through me. Now let's get back to the show.
So
Yeah, because weed was illegal back then, so it must have been more expensive.
Way more expensive.
There was a bigger profit margin.
Back then, no.
Oh, so it was expensive to
No,
buy
to
and
buy,
sell.
yeah. It was expensive as fuck to buy bulk. You know, you could buy a pound back then for like $3-4 grand. You know, now I don't know specifically, I don't know exactly, but I assume it's $1,000 to $2,000 for a pound.
Right.
But back then it was so much, and then you were still selling it at almost the same price you're selling it to today. You know, so you're paying double and still selling at the same price you're making it today.
Right.
So there wasn't really that much profit, at least back then with weed.
But then you switch over to Molly and it's like ridiculous, right?
Yeah. No, I switched over to Molly. It was ridiculous. I mean, I was still, you know, a popular kid. I still knew a lot of people, especially in that scene, since I had been in that scene myself. You know, the raves, the music festivals. I was in that scene myself. So, yeah, it happened really easy. And it went zero. Like I said, in 1 month, I went from having like $600 to $10,000. And that's the first time I had ever felt $10,000. It's the first time I had ever seen it.
It might as well be $1 million, bro. The first time you make 10 grand and you're holding $10,000 in your hand, you're just like, bro.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like much, but you know, I'm what, 19 years old?
Yeah.
I'm 19,
You're a
20
kid.
years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have that. I'm like, okay. And then, yeah, that's why I said we got the apartment. We moved out, me and my 2 homeboys. And then that, like, next year or two was probably the craziest, you know, year or two of my life.
All right, so let's take it in because I really want to dive deep into this part of the story. So you move into this house with all these other drug dealers, and then you said originally this guy was your plug. So was Ultra the boom, or did you keep like that volume?
No, Ultra was the boom.
Okay.
Ultra was the boom, and then I switched my role. You know, I switched my role. Now I wanted to work less, you know, and then I had 2 people with me who were willing to work.
Right.
You know, they were like, this is what they did. You know, so with those $10,000 I made, I started buying bulk. And then from there, I just started buying bulk and then giving it to them.
So you were kind of wholesaling to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those next, like 2010, 2011, like those next couple of years, I got to that level where I was just getting thousands. And then, you know, I would give one friend 1,000, the other friend 1,000, the other friend 1,000. And I just have to do just one transaction with them.
There was less money, less profit, but I would assume the volume was faster because you had more people selling.
Well, less profits in a sense because...
But you had more, but that's what I'm saying. You had more volume because you had like a team of people selling the drugs for you.
Less work. So I'd rather, let's say I get 1,000 for $3,000.
Right.
I'd rather just give it to you for $4,000 and make $1,000.
Right.
Rather than breaking down 1,000 and then maybe I can make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 profit off of it. But you know how much work that is?
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I wasn't really trying to. I wasn't in that hustle mode anymore.
Right.
I was just in that stage of my life. I was really in the party mode. I was much more in the party mode and just hang out with friends, go out. You know, I started going vacations. You know, Vegas, cruises. I started doing a lot more, so I didn't want to have to work. You know, I didn't want to. I was fine with once a week meeting up a few of my friends, boom, 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 and then I would keep like 500 for myself, and I would break those down. You know, because I still had friends who wanted to get 100 or 200, right. Or if I wanted to come to a party with a 50-pack, stuff like that. So I would keep some for myself to break down, but the majority of it I would just disperse and wait.
So once a week, you're literally like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, and make like $3-4 grand.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, no. It was...
Now, a question. you said originally the guy you lived with was your plug. How did that transition happen to where?
Well, because he was my plug because at that time I was buying hundreds. You know, he would buy 1,000 and then I was buying 100,
The hundreds.
100 here for like right before Ultra.
Right.
I made all that money breaking down 100 packs. That's the reason I made all that money so fast because I was hustling, breaking down the 100 packs, trying to make more money. But then once I got to that 10,000, now I'm the one buying 3,000 or 4,000 at a time and giving him the 1,000. He could have easily done that, but he was kind of smart in a sense. He didn't want to go to that level. He was just 1,000 would be the most he'd ever get.
What ended up happening? You had someone you like ended up surpassing him, so he was like, look, here's where I buy it from. Is that kind of like what happened?
No, I had a plug.
So you didn't even need him really.
In the beginning, I did. I mean, I didn't need him, but in the beginning, he's the one who introduced me to it.
Right.
But then I reached out to my old Pot Connect,
And
who
he
also
knew
had
some
Molly.
people.
No, he also had Molly.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, perfect. So then I started going to my old Pot Connect from Molly, and then my boy started coming to me, which is crazy because my old Pot Connect that I first started getting Molly was a guy who 7 years later ends up being a part of the people who put me in prison.
Full circle. That's wild.
Yeah, full circle.
Okay, so at this point, you're literally making like 4 or 5 racks in one shot every week. You just meet up with your same guys?
Every other week.
Okay.
Yeah, every other week, like every 2-3 weeks.
And you're pushing the same consistent amount of weight to everybody. Just so people know, when you say 1,000, what do you mean? Like
1,000 pills. So I would get it pilled out already. He would pill it out for me. He would separate it, put in the pills, and give me like 1,000 pack, or they call it tank. They used to call it a tank back then. I mean, I don't know what they call it now. I don't know. There's so many different terminologies nowadays. Like, it's weird for me, you know, being away for 7 years, I get out and I hear people say things and I'm like, what?
No, bro, we're in a
What does
different
that
world.
mean? What does that mean? I don't
Now,
know.
like, bro, everything's laced with fentanyl, and it's like it's a whole nother.
Yeah, but I mean terminologies in general. Like, there's just so many terminologies that I'm like, I just nod my head and be like, yeah.
That's funny. When did we become the old man? Anyway, all right. So, but this is like years of this doing this.
It was really 1 year, one solid year.
1 year,
of that.
okay.
Like let's say it was 2 years of like, but the first year was more like when I got that 10 grand, the rest of that year was more me hustling. Then that next year was that. And it lasted about 1 year.
All right. So
That was the, I guess, most successful year of my life, of my drug dealing career.
was that early into the Molly coming into Florida?
Yeah,
Like,
that's when it first boomed. 09, 010, 11. That's
so
what
would you say you were kind of like one of the first guys to get into that scene?
my people were. The people who were blowing it up were one of the first.
Mm.
Because I was very selective too. It's not like, again, I told you, I dealt with a specific people. I wasn't the type of person trying to go out and just sell to everybody.
Right, exactly.
So was I part of the expansion? Yes, in a sense, but I wasn't, you know, one who was trying to like go out and like sell to everybody.
Right.
No.
Of course. That makes sense.
I just had my few people and that's who I kept to.
Right.
But my connect and those people were the ones getting 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 and spreading it all over to South Florida. It's crazy.
Wild. They were getting it straight from China. I
Yeah.
bet. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Bro,
Yeah, they were getting it straight from China. They had the pill press machines. They had all
Nuts.
that stuff.
that is crazy. That's another level because they're getting it at so cheap. They must have been making so much money, bro.
Yeah.
It's nuts. All right, so you have this hardcore run. Tell me a little bit about. I mean, I have an idea of how much you're making really good money. And let's talk about a little bit about like what's your life like? Like, what are you up to? Where you? I know you said you're.
So, I'm a very active person, like we spoke about earlier, and I remained active my whole life. Like after high school, I never stopped playing sports. You know, most people I know after high school kind of like dwindle away from activities, from sports, from that type of lifestyle. I never stopped.
Right.
You know, even through my drug dealing phase, even through my drug addict days, even through all that, I was still playing sports. You know, I started hitting the gym right when I graduated high school. I graduated high school really like slim and, you know, petite. And then I started working out. And within the first like 2-3 months, I gained like 30 pounds. All natural, but I was, you know, drinking pre-workout, drinking protein 2-3 times a day, you know, working out 2 hours a day, every day. Like I went on, because one of my good friends, his dad was into working out. So I started working out with them and I blew up. I mean, in that sense, you know what I mean? Like,
I get it.
so then after that, you know, I started when I was 18 working out. And so I continued to work out. So throughout this whole crazy lifestyle, I was still working out. I was still playing basketball all the time. I was still playing hockey. I was still in the adult hockey leagues, playing hockey every single week. So my lifestyle was just sports, activities, friends, and going out.
You said you traveled a lot. Well, what were some of the trips you did?
Not a lot, but I went on a bunch of cruises. Like especially those couple years that I was like a little more financially free in a sense. I probably went like on 5 cruises. I love cruises. Cruises are the number one vacations in my opinion. You know, yeah, I went to Vegas 3 years in a row for EDC though. EDC Vegas. It's a music festival.
So it was kind of like a work and play at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't really work when I went there. That's kind of heated. You know what I mean? I just went to enjoy. But every time we'd go, we'd stay for a whole week. You know, we'd stay. The festival's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'd stay from Tuesday to Tuesday. And so I did that 3 years in a row. I did EDC Puerto Rico 3 years in a row. And yeah, pretty stuff like that. And then I would travel around Florida, like for festivals, you know, little camping festivals or other festivals, and you know, go to Tallahassee for the FSU game, stuff like that. You know, I mean, I was pretty free. You know, I didn't have to work, and I made enough money to kind of live that lifestyle.
And I'm assuming because you kind of dealt with the same people, there was no real danger of ever getting in trouble.
Yes and no.
More or less. At the time. At the time.
Well, one of the reasons that 2 year came into an end is because even though I was dealing with the same people, they got in trouble.
Okay. So towards the end of the 2 years, the reason you kind of walk away is because somebody ends up getting arrested?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Someone got it. So this happened that 1 year that we had that one good stretch, the best stretch I had with that. Towards the end, and it's crazy because at that point I had like $100,000 saved, cash, and I was thinking about stopping. You know, and it's funny because that's usually how it always happens. That one last deal. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking of stopping. I really wanted to just get out of the game. I had like $100,000 saved. Maybe I can, you know, do something with it. And so I told you I had lived in Gainesville. There was a friend of mine that she was from Miami, but she also lived in Gainesville. And there was a point of probably like 6 months span, or probably even a year span, I can't remember how long it was, that I would send Molly with her up to Gainesville. And she was selling it over there. And so she ends up getting caught. She ends up calling me to buy more, which I'd always give her like 500 at a time. Like it wasn't a little bit either. It was 500, 1,000, but she was always good. And I would front her. I would front it to her. She would go take it and pay me the money every time. You know, we had it, we were cool. And then she gets caught, her and her boyfriend, they got into like some crazy argument. Cops were involved. They had a bunch of shit in the house. And then obviously they work out a deal. So she starts snitching on people. And then she sends detectives to buy off me.
What is this, DEA?
No.
The local cops?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, local cops. Yeah, it wasn't like federal or anything like that. It was just...
At the time?
Yeah, at the time.
At the time. We graduate later. Okay. So, did you get busted or no?
Not me specifically, because I didn't have any with me at the time. I sent it to a friend, but it ends up getting back to me. And then me, my roommate, and him all ended up getting arrested for it.
Okay. Now, this is eventually they bring it leads back to you, but you don't ever do like a buy bust or anything like that with a cop.
No.
Okay. All right. So walk me through so you end up getting arrested?
Yeah, we end up getting arrested. They come to our crib, we get arrested, they take us, they have this evidence, you know, phone calls, text messages, all these things.
But this is like Miami PD. This isn't okay.
Miami PD. I was there overnight, or I was there for, I think, because it was a Thursday or Friday, so I was there for the weekend. I get out, and then wait up. So yeah, I was there for the weekend.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like the whole kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
So I was there for the weekend. I get out, and then they press charges as like was it like a attempt? Because like since I wasn't the one who did it,
right.
It wasn't like the specific charges on me. Correct. It was like an attempt charge. Or I forgot exactly the name of the charge, but obviously I plead no guilty. My co-defendant ended up pleading guilty. I don't know why, but he just wanted to get it out the way right away.
Right.
So I plead no contest. And then I end up getting on probation for it. I ended up getting 3 years probation.
Okay.
And then I get out. Well, I mean, again, I got out in the weekend, but after that whole little saga kind of finished, then I spent the next whole year kind of living off the money that I had
The
saved.
money you saved.
Yeah, if I was smart enough, I should have, got a job, used that, whatever.
Yeah.
But I was so into that lifestyle and just addicted to that lifestyle that the money that I saved, I just spent to continue living the lifestyle I was living.
Got it. So you don't really sell drugs, but you're still partying and you're still like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had to pay rent. I had a 4-bedroom house
of
in
course.
Kendall. I had by that time my roommates had already left. I had
Yeah, how's all
that next year. No, I had one roommate that stayed, but he wasn't like a dealer or anything. And then I went through multiple roommates through that like year and a half. Different roommates that stayed for a couple months, or like friends of mine that stayed for a little bit, left. And but yeah, I was still living off of the money that I saved. Obviously not going as hard as I was before, but not working and doing that. And I was on probation, so I couldn't sell. I couldn't really do anything. I was getting drug tested, like all these things. So,
Right. So since you were getting drug tested, how were you kind of sustaining that lifestyle without getting caught?
well, I wasn't smoking, or I would smoke, and I would do a detoxes.
Mm.
Every time actually, it's funny. It's a crazy story because I got drug tested the first couple of times. But then after that, I went the whole other 2 years with 0 drug tests. But I went in every month. So every month I would go in, I would spend $35 on a detox.
And they wouldn't piss test
And they
you?
never piss tested me.
That's funny.
Never. I went that whole other 2 years. I forgot. I think I got off in like a year and a half or 2 years. But I went the whole probation after the first few drug tests, never getting drug tested. And I would just detox every single time, even though I never got drug tested. But better safe than sorry.
So do you complete the probation?
Yeah, but before I completed probation is when another opportunity came.
You always get tempted. It always happens. All right, walk me
Yeah.
through it.
So 2013, I'm already like a year and a half into my probation. And I run into my old Molly Connect, who was my old Weed Connect at a Denny's in Kendall. I hadn't seen him since the whole like bust happened.
all you guys got
since
arrested.
everything happened, I hadn't seen him. And I run into him and we're like, oh, what's up? Oh, they're like, what's up? How's everything? Blah, blah. I told him the story, I told him everything that happened. And, I told him obviously I didn't rat on him. I didn't snitch on nobody. We're good, blah, blah. He's like, all right, cool. We exchanged numbers and that was it. And then he hits me up like a couple days later and he's like, yo, are you still are you still interested in doing this? I have an opportunity. Then he comes over and it's Molly again, but instead of the capsules, it's the crystal.
Mm.
It's like the kilos of crystal. Which again, it wasn't real Molly, but it was, the same shit that had been going around
Right.
at that time.
Okay, so tell me the difference between selling it in the capsules and then selling it in crystal.
Well, selling it in crystal, at that point, I was literally only middlemaning. Because, mind you, I'm on probation. And even though I was taking this opportunity, I wasn't trying to get busted or
Of course.
caught. So I wasn't getting it and breaking it down. I was only getting it and middlemaning it. He was like, hey, do you know people who need? And I'd be like, okay. So I'd link up, oh, this person needs, boom. And I would kind of link it up. This person needs, boom. And just make like a middleman cut.
Okay.
I was trying to keep my hands off of it as much as possible.
As much as possible. Yeah, of course. If you just from one person to the next.
Exactly. It's like, all right, he has the kilos. He asked me if I know people who want. Okay, these people want, boom, and I'm just make the cut.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to get my hands dirty.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
So is it kind of like you just hit up the same people and they're like, yeah, let's go? Or kind of?
Yeah, kind of. I hit up some of the same people that I used to mess
they're
with.
like, hell yeah,
and
bring
they're like, yeah, we got
Okay.
it. And then maybe a couple new people. But yeah.
So what's the difference with the crystal kilo? They had to kind of like capsule it themselves or what? Or what's
Yeah,
the-
or they would also do the same thing.
Got
They
it.
would get the kilo and then break it down in ounces of just the crystal.
Got
You
it.
know what I mean?
Okay.
Or they would do whatever they want with it. You know what I mean? They would do whatever I wouldn't know exactly what
Right,
they
of
did
course.
with it.
What kind of,
But-
was there more money in that or not really?
No, I mean, it was kind of the same thing. I'd get it for 3,000, give it to this guy for 4,000 or 3,500 and make
Right.
500. You know, it was less money, but at that point I needed something to survive. I had ran through all the money that I had.
And you
I
had,
had no
left.
money. This guy came literally at the perfect time. You know what I mean? Like the perfect time where I had just run out of the funds I had. And I was like, fuck it.
Bro, you know what's funny? When you think a kilo of drugs, you think like cocaine or you think of heroin. You never think of Molly. A kilo of Molly must look so crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a kilo of crystals. It could look like, I guess, crystal meth. I don't know what crystal meth looks like, but, you know,
Yeah,
it could
I guess.
look like just crystals. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
All right. So you're doing that to basically just survive. You're not really making like a ton of money.
No. At that point, I wasn't going crazy with it. You know,
Okay.
I was doing
And
it.
you're trying to stay low key because you're still on probation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But that little session I had with him was short-lived, which is crazy because that little session I had with him was short-lived, which is what ended up landing me into what it
Prison,
landed me.
of course. All right. So how long is that little run for?
It started probably I think like 5 months. It was, I think, from May 2013 to September. May,
Okay.
July, August, yeah.
And what
Those-
makes you stop?
So me and my dealer, we kind of were having like disagreements and arguments a lot, you know, because they wanted more out of me. You know, they wanted me to do more.
Right.
They wanted, you know, and then I was kind of just making enough just so I can live the lifestyle. You know, I was
Right.
still partying. I was still doing what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be as involved as they wanted me to be.
Right.
So we kind of had our differences. You know, we had our differences, and then I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not gonna mess with these guys no more. And then they kept moving. You know, they kept moving, and then that's actually when I went through the darkest time of my life. 2013, when all that happened, and then I stopped dealing with them, and then that summer, or like that summer to fall to the end of the year, was for sure the darkest time of my life. You know,
What made it so dark?
the amount of drugs I was doing. Like that's when I really fell into like, I had just broken up with, earlier that year, I had broken up with the girl I was with for 5 years. You know, everything that had happened before, the year before. And then I had gotten with another girl that she was kind of into that lifestyle of just getting fucked up all the time. And, you know, she moved in with me for those few months and we literally just kind of spiraled down. I mean, at the time I was having fun. You know, at the time I was living.
Yeah, but now you look back and you're like,
No. Towards the end of the year, I went through kind of like a mini depression type thing, you know? And you know me, it's not that I got depressed like that. I don't really get depressed, but I got to a point in my life where I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, I spent those probably like 4 months just getting fucked up every day. I tried a whole bunch of different type of drugs. I was doing a lot every day, 6-7 days a week. Some weeks I wouldn't even make it to Sunday. By
Wow.
Saturday night, where I'm sleeping till Monday, and repeat. And then that happened. And then the end of 2000,
what are you doing? Like smoking weed or coke or what are you doing?
smoking weed, drinking, and coke was mainly it. But then I would, like, as pills would be presented, I would pop them, prescription pills.
Is this around the time where like Oxycontin and like Percocet and all that shit?
Yeah, exactly. Perks. Again, I never got addicted to any of them. I wasn't doing any of those on a daily basis. The only thing I was doing on a daily was smoking and drinking. But then, you know, on a weekly basis, I would compound it with other things, you know, going out partying, you know, doing blow, popping a pill, ecstasy, going to festivals still, raves, everything. And
Did you have a moment, like was there some day where you woke up and you had done like just an obscene amount of drugs or something? You were like, bro, what the fuck am I doing?
something like
Something
that.
like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Tell me the story.
So what happened was it got to the end of that year, 2013, the end of the year, and my ex-girlfriend was coming back down. She had moved away for college. She was coming back down to visit, and like, you know, I was still, you know, in love with her. You know, I was still like into her, and I still wanted to try to make things work, even though I had fucked up as much as I had. So the girl I was seeing that I was in the house with, I kind of like, you know, made a move to get her back to her house, get her out of my house. And then that little time that I spent without her right before I spent time with my ex is when I really had this like moment of awareness or awakening in a sense. You know, I thought to myself, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, like I was a good kid my whole life growing up. I was the most athletic in elementary school, middle school, high school. You know, I had good grades. You know, I had the Bright Future Scholarship, lost it all. Like I've excelled in almost everything I've ever done. Even when I played video games, I was always, you know, first or second place in Call of Duty. Like And then for I'm looking back, I'm like, the last 6, 7, 8 years of my life now, I've been doing this. And that's when I kind of had that switch. You know, I had that switch. I ended up seeing my ex. We spent New Year's together. Probably one of the best New Year's I've ever had. And then we kind of tried to get back, those next few months, but things obviously didn't work out. Sometimes once you pass a certain, limit, it's over. There's no going back. So, but that year, 2014, I spent, rehabilitating. That year I made that switch in my mind that I'm like, I got to change. I'm a gifted kid and it's all going to waste. And I started thinking about my family and my friends and my mom and like, because there's a point in your life where you really don't think of other people. Like a lot of people, even to this day, they're 30 and 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds who still think of just themselves. They don't understand that what we do affects everyone around us, especially the people closest to us, like our family and our close friends.
For sure.
And, I went through that moment where I always thought that what I did was what I did. It's my life. I can do whatever I want, not really realizing how much damage I was doing to my mom and my dad and my brothers and, everybody. So, that year I kind of, switched up, I quit smoking and I would still smoke on occasion, but like I would go months without smoking. I had to change my friend group, because a lot of it is environment. People don't understand that. I want to reverse real quick back to like when I was a kid, about the whole environment thing. I grew up in a neighborhood that was full of drugs. I feel like if I would have grown up in another neighborhood that was full of, kids going to college or kids that swam, maybe I would have been that part of that group because that's the type of person I was. I blend into the group of people that I'm in. And you experienced that when you saw me in prison.
I agree. I mean, I've done this show enough to where I understand that environment is a big part of why people make their choices.
I mean, it's not everything.
It's not everything, but it's a big influence.
But when you take the personality that I had, being that person where, I want to be friends with everybody and go up, if the group of friends that I'm chilling with are all smoking,
and they're all
I'm going to
drug
be
dealers. Yeah, exactly.
the top smoker, or I'm going to be, you know what I mean? So I took on that role. And I feel that a lot of people don't understand that, the environment plays a big role in where we end up and the decisions we make.
I've locked down how many people I've done this podcast with, and environment and the people they're around always plays a huge role in the decisions they make. Always, it never fails. I feel like a lot of people, had they just been around different circumstances, things would have turned out very different.
1,000%.
But at the same time, you could argue that because they went through what they went through, they are who they are today. So it's like, it's always.
Well, I mean, for me, like I don't regret anything.
Exactly.
We're gonna get there, but
right. So
yeah, 2014 now. I quit smoking. I had to change my group of friends again because I couldn't hang out with people who were smoking every day. I start getting friends that were, that worked out. All my friends that those years were all buff. I started working out more. I was still partying, drinking stuff, but I went away from the dealing lifestyle. I wasn't selling drugs anymore. I wasn't smoking weed anymore. I tried the network marketing.
I remember.
Yeah,
it's crazy. We found that out later.
Yeah, we found out that we're connected to that too, bro.
That's funny.
Small world. No such thing as coincidence.
Carlos is coming in these next couple of weeks to record with somebody that records in the studio. Nice. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's a crazy connection that we had.
Yeah, crazy.
We probably would have been at the same.
Probably. We were probably like either in the same room, same convention center or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's wild.
So yeah, I tried that out for a few months. That didn't go as planned. I started working at a restaurant in mid-2014. I got a restaurant job, which I had worked at restaurants on and off throughout this whole thing. It's not like I never worked, because at the end of the day, I was also trying to keep a certain image to my parents, to my mom, to my family that I was working. So I would get jobs at restaurants, but a lot of them were short-lived. My first restaurant job was probably when I was 15 as a busser. And then every year or two, I would get another restaurant job as a server, worked at different restaurants. So 2014, I ended up getting I ended up getting a job at a restaurant at a Red Lobster. And things are going well. I've been working there. Now I've been, soberish for that whole year. Things are going great. I got off my probation. And I made a choice to leave. I got to the point in my life where, like, what am I doing in Miami? I wasn't dating the girl that I wanted to be with anymore. I wasn't friends with the people I was friends with before anymore. And I thought it was the best move, to get out and just to leave everything behind. So my mom helped me buy a condo in Winter Park, and that's where I moved.
So you make a dramatic change. Like you get sober, you move to another city. So it's like...
So one of the reasons I moved to Winter Park specifically was for Full Sail University. And that's where I kind of got reintroduced to music, which is a big part of my story as well, which we're going to get to. But so I always had music in me, like my family does music. In high school, I was in the drum line. From freshman year to junior year. Senior year, I quit because I was like, I'm too cool for for this, like that's what I thought back then. But I was always musically inclined. My stepdad is into music, my mom, my real dad, amazing musician. I've always been around it. They've been in bands growing up. So when I decided to make this change, my mom and my stepdad were like, why don't you do something with music? You've always had a natural ear, but I just never studied it. I never pursued it. I never really did anything with music. So that's when we decided to go to Orlando, to go to Winter Park, and I went to Full Sail. I went to Full Sail University, which is a great private university for arts, visual arts, audio arts, all sorts of arts. And then that's what I was doing there. I moved in 2015, literally January. Like I had to pack up the house that I had, moved up January, and then I spent the next 3 years there until I went in.
So while you're in Orlando, is that when the feds come looking for you?
Yeah. So I moved to Orlando, and again, Orlando now was another shift, another
Right.
switch up in my life. I moved to Orlando, another change. There, I'm really barely drinking. I'm like going out once a week, once every 2 weeks. Like focused. Going to school, working at Red Lobster. I wasn't even really dating much there either. I mean, after like 5-6 months, I ended up dating a girl that I was working with. And then I ended up staying with her till I went in. But so 2015, I was there for about a year and a half until 2016. And that's when things happened. And it's crazy because at the end of 2015, or like the beginning of 2016, my friend sends me a picture of the front of the Miami Herald, and it says Mali Invasion. And in the picture, I see my old plug, my old boss, and 2 other guys that I knew. There were a picture of like 10 different people. And it said Mali Invasion, excuse me. And then the article was of my Connect. And it spoke all about him, the school he went to, how he was a good student, blah, blah, and everything he was doing. And now I'm thinking like, holy shit, I dodged a bullet. Because I had already, I was only involved for 5 months. I was such a small part of the operation. And then they all kept going. And then here we are 3 years later, or 2.5 years later.
And they get busted.
And they're getting busted. And it's all over the news. And in my mind, I'm like, whew, like I dodged a bullet, So that's it. That's all I heard from it. That's all I saw from it. It was cool. In the summer of 2016, I get called from a close friend. And he tells me that the feds are investigating him and that they called him. They want to interrogate him to snitch on someone else, and that they know about me and that they want me to reach out so that they can interrogate me. All of this is to get beef on someone else. And obviously I attorneyed up, I lawyered up. I got an attorney, asked him what was the best thing to do. The feds wanted to talk to me, but the attorney talked to him, and then we planned a day for me to go down to Miami to meet up with the feds.
But it sounds like there wasn't much they could get from you at that point. They had, because you were kind of like the small fish. They caught everybody already.
Yeah.
So they at that point, what's crazy? It sounds a lot like my case. In my case, I was a small fish, and they caught me last. They hadn't caught everybody. It's like they didn't even need me, but you know how the feds are.
And when you're last, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do when you're last.
So you go meet up with the feds.
Yeah.
Nothing happens there because the case is pretty much over.
We go meet up with the feds. So what had happened was, back when I was dealing with them, it was the main guy, and then I was like that middle man between the main guy and someone else. One of the guys that I was connecting him with ends up kind of taking over that role, but then he's also dealing and doing everything. And then he ends up going with him, and they keep doing what they're doing, importing, and they were importing other drugs too, like Flakka and all these other things.
The fuck is Flakka?
I don't know. Flakka is, I don't know what the fuck it is. Something.
Some other stuff.
And they were importing guns, I think. I don't know.
What?
And crystal meth. I don't know. They
These
got
guys
into
are
a whole
wild.
bunch of other shit they were doing.
Wild.
And but I didn't know anything because as soon as I left that group in 2013, I disassociated from them.
Right.
I stopped talking to them, stopped hanging out with them.
So those guys were wilding out. They were doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so the whole reason they were interrogating me for was because they were trying to indict this guy.
Right.
And it's crazy because initially they had offered him a 4-year plea deal. If he would have taken the 4-year plea deal, he probably would have went in and got out in 2 years, you know, with RDAP. He would have got
FSA,
out.
all that stuff. Yeah.
And that's it. Nobody else would have gotten in trouble. They would have just got him because that's all they knew. But his stubborn ass said, no, I want to go to trial. When he decided he wanted to go to trial, they opened up the case. And they started looking through all the records, all the packages, all the addresses.
Arresting more people.
They started getting everyone, interrogating all these people who were sending money, receiving packages, all the lower level people. And then they have a whole...
They blew the case wide open.
a whole open investigation. Now they knew about me, which they had no idea who I was. When I went to the interrogation, they told me everything. They said, we had no idea who you were. And then actually, a year and a half, 2 years later, when I go to the sentencing, she even told the judge, we had no idea who Gabriel was. We had no idea who he was if it weren't for this person opening the case.
That's crazy, bro.
But the point is, so
it's crazy because it really is like my case. Like it was one guy, they caught one guy, and that one guy opened the floodgates for like a whole.
Well, the guy that got me in, he wasn't the one who opened it. They actually caught one other guy before,
Right.
He was the one who snitched on everybody. He got snitched on everybody, but not me. He snitched on everybody, but he snitched on me because I wasn't part of what was going on when he got caught.
Right.
When he got caught, he snitched on the big boss, this other guy I was talking about. You know, he got them. He ended up not even doing any time. He did 0 time.
That's crazy in the feds. You know, you and me know that everybody does time in the feds.
He did 0 time. He became a CI. He did 0 time, and he just started bringing people in.
Well, he was wearing like a wire.
I don't know the details, bro.
That's wild.
I don't know the details.
That's
I just
crazy.
know that he's the one who busted the case wide open. But then when they got the big guy, and then when they got this guy that they were going to offer the 4 years, and he said, nope, I'm going to go to trial, then that's when they started investigating, got all the lower level people in, and that's when they, this is where this guy is, and they put me on the board.
Let me guess. That guy lost a trial.
He didn't even go to trial.
He didn't end up going
We're
to
about
trial.
to get there. He didn't even go to trial. So they take me in for the to interrogate me.
you.
And they start asking me a bunch of questions of shit that I don't know.
Right.
Showing me pictures, showing me addresses, showing me
It's like,
cars.
bro, I haven't done this in like 3 years.
Yeah, I'm like, and the prosecutor thought I was lying.
Right.
She was getting mad at me. She was getting really, and then my attorney comes out. We take a break. We go outside. And he's like, look, be honest with them. I'm like, bro, I'm being honest
with them. I haven't done this in 3 years.
I'm being honest. All the questions she's asking me, I don't know who these people are. Like I don't know. She wanted me to like give up things. And on top of that too, it's not in my nature. You know, I believe if you can't serve the time, don't commit the crime. You know, so many people out here are just doing shit, not knowing the repercussion of it. You know, and I'm a firm believer is if you hurt somebody, you're hurting yourself. You know how I feel about connection and spirituality. So I've never even had it in me to even snitch on anybody, you know. But in that case, I literally didn't even know anything. You know, like I didn't know anything. I didn't have the information they wanted. And then even when they were asking about me, I still wasn't giving them any information just because, you know, I'm not cut like that. And so she was pissed. You know, she was pissed. She was mad. She's like, you know what? When we're done with this, we're going after you. I'm like, damn. And then actually, I didn't even finish school because she said that they were going to come after me in the next few months. She's like, oh, we're going to go after you in the next few months. Get ready. I asked her, I'm like, should I finish school? I have a year left. She's like, you shouldn't even waste your money. I know full sale is expensive. You shouldn't even waste your money. I'm like, damn.
Sounds like a real prosecutor.
Yeah, no. It was crazy. And then I remember even too when we're walking out, because it was the prosecutor, the FBI, and DEA. And what's the other one? Homeland Security. It was 4 of them. And I think it was the FBI guy or someone when we're leaving. He's being super nice to me. Hey, bro, just, you know, if you know of anybody else that does anything illegal, any dealers,
if you know
just let us know. It's really gonna help you out. I'm like, all right, bro. And I just walked out. And then even my attorney told me too. He's like, bro, if you give him anything, if you give him people, if you give him any hints or tips, it'll really help your case. I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna do it. Like I can't. Like what?
That's
fucking crazy. That's just crazy to me how many people do it. Like, you see how many people cooperate, especially for like little time.
That's what the feds are
like. There are people.
That system is built on that.
There are people who are facing a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And they'll snitch on the big guy and get him 10 years. And then bring down a bunch of other people with them. Another guy gets 5, another guy gets 7, another guy gets 6.
Yeah.
All he had to do was take that fucking 1 year. And they couldn't do it. And then now they're doing 2 months. And they brought down and they just ruined.
Yep.
It's fucked up. It's fucked up. So I go back to Orlando thinking that I got a few months left. I'm like, damn, I got a few months left. Shit. So then, I dropped out of school. I stopped thinking because I thought I had a few months left. And then, I kind of just start partying again. I lived a clean life there for a while I was there. But in this point, now I'm thinking I'm going to prison. And I was thinking, I might get like 5 years, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe 5-6 years. So I'm like, fuck it. I go back to Orlando and I'm still responsible. I'm still working. I'm still playing sports. I'm still working out. I'm still doing my stuff. But, I'm going out, socializing more, partying more. I had my group of friends there. I had my girlfriend at that time. So, just enjoying my time as much as I could, thinking I had a few months left. And then I remember 7 months had passed and nothing. I didn't get a call, nothing. And then I had hit up a friend of mine who was an attorney as well. Not my attorney, but just a friend, just for advice. And then I told him what had happened, the situation. And he said, sometimes they do that to scare people too.
Sometimes they're
they
not
just
gonna come after you. Yeah.
scare you because like 7 months, they haven't not even a phone call or nothing. So I'm like, all right. So I called my school. I was going to re-enroll back in school so I can finish. And then I remember a week later, my attorney calls me and he's like, hey, they're ready to indict you. I'm like, fuck.
They were nice enough to call you. They fucking came and got my ass at 5
because
in the morning.
my situation was different.
Right.
My situation was different.
Right.
So then, they're ready to indict you. So now I'm like, fuck. I go back to, just living that life. I'm not going to lie, that year and a half before I went to prison, I had an amazing time. And it was a somewhat wholesome time because I got close to at least the group of people that I was with, because I knew I was going in. They knew I was going in. I had like little groups of friends that all knew I was going in. So everybody would hook me up. I'd go to certain places. I had, certain bars that the bartenders knew my situation. They would give me free drinks. The bowling alley in the area. I became really, really good friends with the manager, with the worker. I'd bowl for free. It was just like, it was a fun year and a half before it ended up almost being 2 years before like everything actually ended up happening.
So what do they tell you? Come in, like turn yourself in. What happens?
So after that, I get the call maybe like a month or two later. I have to go down to Miami and like go and turn myself into the marshal. They handcuff me, process me,
Right.
but then they release me right after.
You bond out that
citizen release or whatever it's called. So I get out that day, go back, and then they put me on a pre-trial probation, pre-sentence probation.
Probation, yeah.
And then I'm on my probation there, and then I have to call every day for like a weekly drug test.
Like check in or
So
whatever.
I call every day. If they call my number, I gotta go in. The first couple weeks, it was like every week, and then after that, it's like every month. But then after a few months, my officer was cool, and he's like, you know what, you're good. You've passed every test. Just wait for your sentencing, and everything will be fine.
So, what do you know you're facing a good amount of time?
No.
You have no idea.
No, no.
Your lawyer never tells you though,
Yes.
like when you sign your plea deal and shit.
He sent me the packet, but I was so just not really paying attention or aware or wanting to really like think about what was happening. I never even looked at my paperwork. He sent me my PSI, and he sent me my PSI, and it had all the information there, like my sentencing range and all that was there, but I never read it. I never opened it up until the day that I was going to sentencing.
Right.
So fast forward now, it's 2018, the beginning of 2018, like January, February, and I go to sentencing. Excuse me. And I'm leaving Orlando, and I'm with my girl. We're in a car, And I'm like, all right, let me decide to read this paperwork. Let me decide to read this paperwork. I open my phone, open the email, I start reading, and then I get to the sentencing guidelines. Bro, I had a pit in my stomach. It said 230 to 260 months.
Fuck, that's wild.
I look over at her. She's like, what's wrong? Because I turned pale.
Fucking 20 years.
Literally, I turned pale. She's like, what's wrong? And I tell her what. She's like, what? She starts crying. I'm like, bro, this can't be. This can't be. I called my attorney, and he's like, wait, you're just reading this now? And I'm like, yeah, bro, my bad. And he's like, well, what happened was, since I was on the state probation from 2000.
Oh, you had priors. Oh, my God.
Well, since I was on the state, even though they're not supposed to, in the feds, they're not supposed to count your state things towards your feds. But I was on probation while that happened. So I was on probation from 2012 to 2014.
Right.
This conspiracy was in 2013.
So it happened while you were.
So I'm technically still on probation.
Bro.
And they doubled my points.
Ridiculous.
So he told me, he's like, look, it's not set in stone. That's just the guidelines. You know, once we get there, he's going to fight for me, you know, and it's up to the judge.
Right.
You know, the judge. But you know that they usually stay within the guidelines.
For sure.
Maybe the lower of the guidelines, but for the most part, anyone who knows anything about the feds, for the most part, they usually stay within the guidelines unless there's cooperation involved or anything like that.
And from the sound of it, you didn't have, you know, the prosecutor wasn't your best friend, so.
No. I'm gonna get there too. I'm gonna get to the trial because she
Okay.
she said some things that.
All right, go ahead. So
I drive down. My sentencing was the next day, and there was really nothing I could do about it. At this point, he's like, "Bro, if you would have told me earlier, we could have had rebuttals and gone back and forth. I sent you this months ago." I'm like, "It's on me. You know, it's on me." I was just so lost in the lifestyle.
You had a decent attorney. He said he could have done a PSR challenge or something for you.
Yeah.
No attorneys do that, bro. Our attorneys are like, "Yeah, this is your PSR." It's like, bro, I want to take this out. No, you can't. Like, bro,
he
what I hear on a daily basis now is crazy.
He was all right, but at the time, I also felt like he wasn't doing enough. You know, everyone feels that. When you're there and you're facing what you're facing, everyone feels like they're not doing enough for you.
For sure.
So,
but anyway, you go?
Yeah, I drive down. The next morning, I go to sentencing, you know, me, my family, my girl, and we go to sentencing, and we go in. Oh, the person, so the person that was getting indicted with me went before me, which is crazy because he was also someone who got collateral damage. I know that he wasn't even a part of the actual grand scheme of things.
Right.
But because of the fact that this one guy wanted to open up the case, which, by the way, he does not end up going to trial. The guy who got the 4 years that they offered him ends up not going to trial, and they gave him a 10-year plea deal.
What a dumbass.
And he takes a 10-year plea deal, but then he cooperates and gets out in 24 months.
If you just would have
just taken the 4 years in the beginning, he would have been out in 24 months.
4 months anyway.
Or less. With RDAP, good time, he would have been out. Instead, he decides to open it up. He gets me and this other guy who really was not even part of them. He was a guy who just used to buy. You know, he was a guy who used to buy. Like, he wasn't a part of that group. And he ends up getting 5 years or 7 years. He ends up getting 7 years. So I see it happening. We're waiting. He gets 7 years. He gets off. So I'm thinking, okay, you know, he got 7 years. Even though I know my situation is different, hopefully maybe I can get 8 or 9
around
or
the
something
same,
lower, you know. So then we got called up, you know, with my attorney. And honestly, the judge was very nice. And this is very rare. But my judge was very nice. You know, I felt the inner energy. You know how I am with energy and like how I can sense people's auras. You know, and the judge's aura she was glowing in a sense. And then I turn and the prosecutor's aura, not so nice. But the judge, I'm like, man, like this lady's, and then even the way she spoke, was like, you know, she wasn't aggressive or mean or anything. So that was a good thing. We get on with sentencing. The prosecutor's painting me out to be this terrible person.
Evil mastermind.
And then on top of that too, in the PSR and all that stuff, they had me as the leader.
Where the fuck did they get that from?
Because when it all started, when this guy started, I kind of connected him to everyone.
Bro, come
but
on.
I know I was involved for 5 months.
Right.
But the problem was that everyone else got caught before I did. So everyone pointed the finger at me. You know, like you said, you were the last one, right? I was the last one. So since I was the last one, everyone pointed the finger at me like, no, he was, because my house, when I was involved, my house was like the meetup. You know, we'd meet up at my house, hang out, party, talk about whatever it was my house because I had the house. So everyone pointed the finger at like me being the leader, me being the boss, me being the head person. So by the time that I got indicted, there's nothing I can say.
Right.
There was nothing I can say. They do not believe anything I say. So now the prosecutor, we're here at sentencing and she's calling me a liar. She's saying I didn't cooperate. You know, I didn't give them what they wanted, blah, blah, blah. And then she even said some things that really, like she said how someone had died. So she came up with this story, how someone in Tallahassee
Died from overdose?
died from an overdose of Molly, and that they don't have any evidence, but they believe that if they were to connect the dots, that it was Molly that came from the organization that I started.
Yeah.
That killed this girl, this college girl. My attorney was obviously like, what? Like he obviously stood up and like, but you know, putting that into the judge's mind
head,
already.
yeah.
And she actually even brought it up at the end when she sentenced me. She said, you know, the fact that it might have been involved with like, they do what they can to like really hurt you. You know, they really don't really care about you. You know, and there was a couple other things that I can't think off the top of my head that she said that were just not real, not true. You know, but there's no one there to hold them accountable for what they say. You know, it's, you know, we're guilty until proven innocent, even though that's not how it really is supposed to be. But so, you know, I have a little speech that I give at the end too. You know, I wrote a speech to talk about what I had been doing, how I changed my life, you know, how, you know, everything that I had been living the last 3 years, you know, because this was 4 years later, or almost 5 years later, from 2013 to 2018. Just 5 years later, I'm getting indicted for something I did back then, you know. And then after, you know, I gave my speech, I got emotional, of course, you know. That's probably the only time that I cried in the whole thing was when I gave that speech. You know, I gave that speech and, you know, yeah, it was hard. It was hard knowing that you might be going away for 20 years. But all in all, you know, throughout all the deliberation and stuff, they ended up dropping points. And my final guidelines was 160 months to 180 months. And then finally, the judge sentenced me to 132 months.
11 years.
11 years.
It's a big drop from
Yeah.
20-something years you were going to get.
Yeah, no. 11
All right.
years. And again, it was 30 months under the guidelines, which usually is unheard of. But I'm telling you, that judge, she had a heart. You know, I can feel like she had a heart. So I ended up getting 11 years. Oh, and actually it's funny because when she was trying to talk, because the prosecutor obviously wanted to get me more time. So the prosecutor started talking about how they gave that one guy 10 years, but they gave him a reduction of sentence because he cooperated. Then they gave the other guy, which was the main guy, 14 years, but he got a reduction of sentence because they cooperated. So like, you know, she was trying to, you know, say that, you know, they got this much time, you know, he was a leader, we should, you know, give time around that time,
Right.
around that same, you know, sentence. So yeah, I ended up getting 11 years in federal prison, 132 months.
Do they give you a surrender date or do they
Yeah.
take you? Okay.
They gave 30 days after. And I wasn't a flight risk or anything. You know, sometimes they take you in right then and there. But
But you had been out on bond for years.
exactly.
Right?
I wasn't a flight risk. They weren't scared or worried of anything. I had been somewhat model citizen for those years, so
Right.
they weren't worried about that. So they gave me a surrender date. And it was actually funny because they gave me the surrender date, which landed, or actually it was a month. But then I wanted to go to my 10-year high school reunion, which was a month later. So I had my attorney file, and then they extended it.
They extended it, yeah.
So I ended up getting 2 months. And then I had to turn myself in the day or 2 days after my 10-year reunion, which I ended up not even going to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a difficult point in my life, you know?
I can relate.
I'm going to go to my, initially I wanted to because I was a popular kid in my high school. You know, I was known. I was like, yeah, I want to go. And then when the time finally came, it's like, bro, do I really want to go? You know, and explain anything if anyone asks me a question. Like, I'm about to go into federal prison tomorrow for 11 years, which I knew wasn't always going to be 11 years, but on an 11-year sentence.
Right.
So, yeah, the time came and I was like, you know what? I'm not going. I'm not going to go. I ended up just hanging out with friends. The night before I went in, you know, I spent with my girl, my close group of friends in Miami, you know, hanging out, playing dominoes, drinking, smoking, chilling. Stayed up till like about 7 o'clock in the morning. Went to bed, woke up at 9 a.m. to surrender at 10 a.m. at the building.
At the building in downtown Miami.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you surrender at FDC Miami. I mean, obviously, life is very different from that moment on.
Yeah. I mean, this gets to the next chapter of my life. You
Right.
know, I mean, as you know, I've lived a lot of different lives. Like one of my best friends that has been a friend of mine since middle school, but we had a point where we were really close, maybe the 2013, 14 era where we got really, really close. I remember we went to a music festival and he told me, he's like, man, you're like the man of many lives. Because, you know, I always had a bunch of little different chapters, you know, different groups of friends, living in a different city, you know, with different roommates, just like constantly. Every like year and a half or 2 years, my life would change. The people I chilled with, the groups of friends, the things I was doing, you know, it was just like that. My life has been like that forever. And it didn't change in prison. You know, prison was, again, like I said, I was in Orlando knowing I was about to go in for what? A year and a half, 2 years. And then what? I go to prison. And then that starts the next chapter of my life. So I self-surrendered at the building. And when I got there, the guy's reading the paper. He's like, man, you're supposed to be at Edgefield. I'm like, my attorney didn't tell me. You know, he said, this is kind of where it was fucked up. I wish he would have told me because, you know, it's a self-surrender.
It would have been much easier.
Yeah, the Edgefield is a camp. So it's a self-surrender there. So, I go to the building and they take me in. And I had my mom and my dad both took me, you know, gave my goodbyes. I go in the building, go through the whole processing thing. You know, they extend it on purpose always. Everything you do takes 2, 3, 4 hours when it could have been done in 30 minutes. But it's part of the process. You know, they're trying to make you suffer as much as you can. So we go in, they take me to the unit. Then I'm in the unit. You know, they bunked me up with this an older white guy, which he ended up being super cool. He was like an old hippie. Dude had been to raves, you know, he grew up in the hippie era. He actually knew a lot about a lot of like stuff. He was cool. But yeah, I mean, that was the beginning of a different life. But, you know, it's crazy because perspective is everything, you know? And for me, I remember my attorney, before I went in, before I even got sent, or actually after I got sentenced, he asked me, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, of course, why? He's like, because you're not crying. He's like, most people in this situation would be crying. And I'm like, why am I going to cry? You know, like, there's nothing to cry about. What's happening is happening. All I can do is understand what's about to happen and, you know, take it on full force, you know, and use it to my advantage. You know, so I went into prison, and from day one, I had just slept 2.5 hours that first day. I stayed up drinking, smoking. I wake up, 2.5 hours of sleep. From day one, I picked up a book. I read, which reading, I hated reading. I was like, reading was something I never did. In school, I copied, I read Cliff Notes or Spark Notes, or I did whatever I could to avoid reading the book just because I hated reading. I was a numbers guy. I was more into math and stuff. But I knew how beneficial reading can be. So from day one, I started reading. From day one, I started writing. I started writing a journal. Day one, I started doing yoga, which back at day one, it wasn't yoga. I was just stretching. I was just in my cell stretching, meditating, and training. Even that first day I was there, I worked out. I worked out in my jumpsuit, a small little workout there. And yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, you know that the change it is, but
In FDC Miami, they have like a basketball court on the roof, right?
yeah, they have a basketball court. They have like the main area, the common area with all the benches and stuff, people playing dominoes, people, you know, hanging out, playing cards.
Fun fact, I remember you told me something pretty cool. You did time with Anuel?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
Anuel Dobla. So my first 2 weeks in there, I was adapting. I was adapting. But realistically, bro, I was not depressed and I was not sad. I was just in there taking it like a training camp, you know, from day one. I remember going to this table. I ended up becoming friends with people who would play rummy and stuff.
Right.
Like a white guy, a black guy. It was a pretty diverse table there. And I would go and I would sit down and we'd start playing. I became, kind of close with them. But one day I go to the table and this one guy says something so negative. I forgot what he said, but like, he's like, oh, fuck, another day here, like, or some shit. And I'm like, bro, I mean, we're here, right? We're alive. Like, there's still so much to do. You know, we can read. I just started like going off on this thing. He was looking at me crazy. He's like, bro, he's like, God bless you, bro. He's like, I'm glad that you see things that way. He's like, but I'm miserable here. I'm like, well, you know, perspective is everything. And then after 2 weeks in, Anuel comes in. I was 2 weeks in the unit, and then some guy comes. And then I had become really good friends with one of the head orderlies there, a Cuban guy from Miami. We would play dominoes together and stuff. So this Puerto Rican guy comes in. I didn't know who he was. And all the Puerto Ricans were following him. Like, I remember I played basketball with him, and he had all the Puerto Ricans on the side cheering on. I'm like, bro, who the fuck is this guy? I'm like, what? So I go and ask my boy who's the orderly. I'm like, bro, who's this guy? He's like, oh, he's some Puerto Rican rapper. He's like, he's not really that big or anything. He's just a local.
Yeah, because he wasn't big at that time.
He wasn't. Yeah. He's just a local rapper. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was it. I spent another 2 weeks there. I ended up getting transferred in a month, which that's very unheard of. There are people that had been there for months waiting for transfer. But it's just one of the things that just worked out for me. I was there for literally exactly 1 month. I think it was 28 days or 30 days. I transferred. I got woken up in the middle of the night. You know, they don't really tell you, you know, for obvious reasons. They don't want, you know, to plan an escape or something. But I got pulled down in the middle of the night, like 5 a.m., pack your bags, get ready. We got pulled up around like 8, 9 a.m., processed, 10 a.m., we were on the road. And I'm
assuming they do the whole diesel therapy, Oklahoma.
Well, actually, no, I got lucky again. You know, the fact that I only spent a month there was already blessed, you know, lucky. And then we didn't take the trip on the bus. We took a plane.
Oh, you did
Con Air.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went straight to South Carolina?
They took the bus to the airport, and then from there we went straight to South Carolina, or straight to Atlanta. Atlanta, then I spent a week there. About a week and a half. And then I went to South Carolina.
Okay. So now you're at a camp, which is obviously very different than being at the building in Miami.
Yeah.
What's it like when you come in? And
so we arrive. Well, transit is crazy. Transit. Did you ever go through transit?
No.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Transit is fucking crazy, bro. It's a madhouse.
Therapy.
It's a madhouse. And in Atlanta, they mix everything. They have, and actually Miami FTC is like that too. They don't have it separated, you know? So you're with people that like...
Yeah, because it's like a detention center.
Well, actually, no, my bad. In Miami FTC, it's mixed like that.
Right.
So you have people going to penitentiaries, going to mediums, going to lows, going to camps.
You have like murderers with like white-collar guys.
Yeah, all in the same building.
It's crazy.
But in Atlanta, they did have two floors. The top were like the penitentiaries and mediums.
The higher security guys.
And then lows and camps. And maybe, I think some mediums might have been in the bottom floor.
The bottom.
That's where we were, but it was a wild house, you know, people fucking smoking K2, people whatever.
Wow.
And I was there for a week and a half, and I go to the camp. And we take the bus go to the camp. When I got to the camp, I was like, in a sense, in heaven, you know, like compared to what the fuck I just came from.
Right.
I had no idea what to expect. You know, I've heard about it because, of course, I'm asking people in the transit process. And like, no, it's sweet, this and that, blah, blah. You're going to Club Fed, whatever, blah, blah. We go. I get there, and it's pretty much like a summer camp for adults, bro. It really is. I mean, of course, there are people who have worked their way down, you know, and there are people who have done time. You know, there are people that have been there, been 17 years down, 20 years down, 25 years down, or 10 years that have just been working their way down. And it wasn't like all fucking happy either, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's prison, you know, like there was a lot of segregation. You know, the blacks with the blacks, the whites with the whites, the Hispanics with the Hispanics, which was crazy to me because I'm like a mix kind of in the middle. You know, I initially get there, and of course, you know how it is. I'm from Miami, so the Miami people approach. The Miami Cubans, because the main people from Miami are Cubans. So the Miami Cubans approach me, oh, what's up, what's up? Oh, where you from? Blah, blah. You know, we're talking in Spanish, of course. They hook me up. You know, they're good with that. You know, they're giving me shoes, shorts, some soups, anything I need to hold me up, toothbrush, soap, whatever I needed to kind of hold me down, at least to commissary. And actually, that was something that had happened in the transits too. So like when I first went to prison, I was kind of surprised about it, you know, because in the building it wasn't like that. The building, I got there, I had to kind of fend for my own self. But when I'm in transit, even in transit, people started helping me out. I'm like, damn, people are actually kind of nice. And then when I get to the camp, oh no, what do you need? What do you need? Shoes? What size are you? This, blah, blah. I'm like, damn, okay. People look out for their own kind though, not for everyone. But then that kind of like put me in the beginning into like this corner with the Hispanics, which I'm Hispanic, but you know me, I'm Americanized. I've been playing sports my whole life. A lot of my best friends have been black. I'm friends with white, like I'm like kind of multicultural, and then the Spanish TV room is literally Spanish TV, like Spanish speaking TV. I don't watch Spanish speaking TV. It was just, they kind of like boxed me in there because that's how it is. But slowly but surely, like soon enough, literally not even a weekend, I think it was a few days. Yeah, actually, I think it was like the next day because I still had my transfer clothes. I didn't even have other clothes. I was just shooting hoops. I was playing basketball. And then one of the blacks approached me. He's like, yo, what's up, man? I see you ball. We need a point guard for the basketball team. We just started the league. Do you want to play? And I'm like, hell yeah. Like what? Hell yeah, I want to play. So that kind of like, opened the door for that. The league had just started. So now every week, every Tuesday, I'm playing in the basketball league. And I play basketball. Like that's something I played my whole life. So in prison, at least in the lows and the camps and stuff like that, sports is a big thing. Sports is a big thing. It's kind of one of the only things we have. Like the sports would get packed. The people would come out to the yard and watch the basketball games. So that right there is probably what put me on the map in that prison. Like that's kind of what like made my name, playing basketball. That's like the first thing that I started getting recognition. Like, oh fuck, who's that short little Hispanic? Who's that Chico? You know what I mean? Who's that Chico balling? Because I came out and started balling. And honestly, I would not say anything. Something about prison really humbled me. You know what I mean? Like I learned to keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't really say much. You don't want to say the wrong thing to the wrong person. Because if something happens, you get in trouble too. And I mean, prison for me was just more of a growth thing, a journey, training camp. So there was no need to be talking to people. Yeah. So I would go, ball up, leave, but people started fucking with me for it. I started getting in with the blacks, the whites. I started getting cool with everybody. And that's kind of how like I got to be that kind of like independent person. It's not necessarily that I was with the Spanish or the black or the white, but I was allowed in the black TV room. I was allowed in the white TV room. I had seats there. Everyone was cool with me. I was able to, I was kind of like in mainly through the sports, And then music came along. I always say going to prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm going to say it now and I'm going to say it again down by the end of this podcast. Because, like I said, it was a training camp. I was able to really get into the best shape of my life, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And then music came along. So I had been at the camp for about 4 months. I went in May 21st through the transit and all that stuff. I didn't get to the prison till like June or July. So I'd only been there a few months. In September, October, my mom sent me a guitar book for my birthday. The book is called Everything You Need to Know About Guitar, something like that. And I opened it. So in prisons, they have rec. They have rec yards. And the rec yard, most of the time, they have a music room. So this camp didn't really have a music room like that. Excuse me. But they had guitars. They just had a room with a couple guitars. So again, I had been studying a little bit of music. Music was something that I was musically inclined. I never pursued it though. I never really took it seriously. And I got the guitar book. I went to the music room, grabbed the guitar, and started practicing. And then there was a couple months span there that I was literally practicing every single day for like 2-3 hours a day. Just playing chords little by little, reading. I didn't really read too much about the science behind it or anything else. I would just look up the chords and play them. Look up the chords and play them. And then I started being able to sing to them. Like I would like have my mom send me the chords for like different songs so that I was able to like sing along while I was playing them, which made it a lot faster. And I give a lot of the credit to Guitar Hero. I played Guitar Hero growing up and like back when I was, 14, 15, 16, and then I used to smoke with my friends and play Guitar Hero. And it got to the point that I used to play all the songs on Expert. So playing Guitar Hero, you know, you get the exercise on your fingers and the strumming. So by the time I started learning to play guitar, I learned in like 2 months. In 2 months, I was already able to play and sing at the same time. I felt like it was something that like was for me. You know, like I was naturally supposed to do this. So I started playing the guitar. I remember that December. So I picked up the guitar in the beginning of October. So October, November, December. So 2.5 months into me playing the guitar, a friend of mine who was in RDAP invited me to perform for RDAP. He was actually another guitarist, but he had seen what I've been doing, and he invited me to perform. So me and a friend who played the bass did a performance for an RDAP First Friday. It was 130 inmates. And 130 inmates, a couple COs, and the DTSs and stuff. And we played a mashup of like 6 songs. And I'll never forget that day because I blacked out. I literally blacked out. I have the guitar, I have the music stand right here, the lyrics and everything right here, my friend here on the bass. I'm sitting down, playing and singing. But like, it was like one of those things that like, it happens and it's over. You know what I mean? That was the first time that I had ever played for a group of people, over 100 people, that I just learned the guitar 2.5 months ago. But I got a standing ovation. After I finished playing, all I remember is looking up because I was locked into the screen, into the guitar, the music stand. I was locked into the music stand the entire time. As soon as I finish, I look up and everyone is standing. Everyone's on their feet, clapping. And mind you, this is, you know, a bunch of inmates, 130 men, standing up, clapping for me, you know. And then after that, I left, and then people around the compound were like coming up to me and like, bro, some people ask me, oh, is this what you do on the streets? Like, are you a musician? And I'm like, no, bro, you see me practicing every day there. I just learned the guitar. They're like, shut the fuck up, bro. Like this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. And that right there was one of the first things that kind of motivated me to go. Because, you know, a lot of us go in life trying to do things, but then you have people who shoot you down. And it's kind of like a killer. You know, it kind of kills your motivation. You know, imagine you try to do a drawing and then you show it to someone and they're like, bro, it sucks. And then you show it to someone else, oh, you're terrible. You know, are you going to keep drawing? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the person you are. But it was kind of made easy for me that I did get the praise that I did on my first performance from a bunch of inmates. So that kind of is like what sparked me to keep going with the music, you know? So then I started playing more, practicing more, performing. We did a January RDAP graduation with a full band, dope. And then a month later, one of my really good, ends up becoming one of my best friends, who to this day is still one of my best friends, comes to the prison. And he's a guy from Miami, you know, and they introduced him to, he's Cuban, a Cuban guy from Miami in my unit. So, you know, they already introduced everyone from Miami to each other. So they introduced him to me. We say, what's up, whatever. Like a day or two later, I'm having a music class in the chapel because I was teaching music theory because I knew like very minimal music theory from being in the drumline when I was in high school. So I was teaching the class, and he came into the class just exploring. And then after the class, we sat and talked, and he was telling me how he does music on the outside. You know, he was telling me how he produces, how he sings these things, and he writes songs. And I'm like, damn, that's cool. You know, I just started learning to play the guitar. I have the band here. You know, this is cool. He lives in my unit. So we started working. I'm like, I work out every day too if you want to start working out with me. The very next day, he started working out with me. And like, that's it. You know, from then on, he became my best friend. We started working out every day. I taught him how to play the guitar, how I had learned. I helped him lose 30 pounds. You know, he came in a little bit, you know, bigger. He lost weight. We were working out every single day. And then I remember a couple months in, he told me, he's like, why don't we write a song? And then in my mind, initially, I was really like, you know what? Let's wait a little bit, you know, let's get a little better. And he's like, bro, let's just do it. And you know, I've learned a lot of lessons from this guy. You know, this guy is one of my best friends to this day, but he's been one of my greatest teachers in a sense, you know, because I've learned a lot from this guy. And especially with that, you know, sometimes you just got to do it. Like timing is everything, but sometimes the right time is now. You just got to be open for it, you know, and that taught me to do it. And then we wrote a song, and the first song we ever wrote is called Family. And I remember we wrote it. We kind of wrote it for another friend of ours with the hopes that he would learn the guitar and be able to sing it to his family. He ended up not learning, but that song was amazing. You know, and that song, I remember the day we wrote it, we invited him to the library. We sang the song for him, and he broke down in tears. You know, he just started crying and bawling and bawling. He's an older gentleman from Miami too. He's a family guy. You know, he was missing his family, and we wrote this song. It's about being in prison and missing your family. He just started crying. And then I remember he left, and then I looked at my boy, and I'm like, bro, do you see what we just did? Like, do you see what we just created? Like, that was the first song that I had ever written, and the first song we had ever written together. I'm like, this is why we came to prison. I'm like, this is why we came to prison, so we can meet each other, so we can do music, so we can make it, so we can inspire people with our story and our message. And then, yeah, from then on, it was, I didn't end up spending so much time with him. You know, it probably was like, that was what, he went there February, April, we started writing music. By November, we ended up getting in trouble, and then we ended up in the shoe.
What ended up getting you into the shoe?
So, you know how cell phones are illegal in prison. There was like a group cell phone. There was like a group cell phone. It wasn't specifically mine or his, but it was like a group of us that would, you know, use it every once in a while. And we were using that cell phone to, you know, record music. We're using the cell phone to record music, to send videos to our people, to show people the music we were doing.
I'll be real, bro. Looking back, I regret not taking a bunch of pictures and recording a bunch of shit in there, man. I was the one that was like, "No, dog, I'm good."
People are always scared. I mean, of course, because getting a phone shot is a lot, man.
Just to have one picture of me in there would have been worth it.
Yeah, you know? I have a couple.
You have a lot. You've shown it to me. Anyway, so you guys get caught with a cell phone. You get thrown in the
we
shoe.
actually didn't get caught. The cell phone got busted from a stash spot, and then they were doing like they would send them out. They would send them to like to
break the phone and
to break the phone and see everything that was in it. And usually we delete everything, but I guess whoever had the cell phone last didn't delete anything. And then they had a video of me and Eli. So then they sent it back. They got it in November. I remember I was playing soccer. I hear my name on the PA. Hey, you know, come to the front, and him. We go to the front, and yeah, I had no idea what it was because I'm like, what's going on? You know, that cell phone had been taken months ago. It took 2 months. It took it in September, and then in November we got called. So yeah, we got called, and yeah, I remember there was another inmate there that was there kind of looking at us saying like, because like I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, bro, what the fuck happened? And I look at Eli, I'm like, bro, like, did you get in trouble in the fucking, because he was my cellie, you know? Right. So I'm thinking maybe they found something in the cell. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? He's like, I don't know. And this one inmate's there like, I'm like, cell phone? What the fuck? What cell phone? We didn't have a cell phone at the time. We ended up going in. They gave us a shot, and it was that. They had like the video. They had the pictures of the video of us on the cell phone.
Sucks. Okay, so they take you to the shoe.
Solitary confinement, the shoe. And
what was that like?
The thing about the feds is they do the solitary confinement in like a cellie. Yeah, it's not like by yourself. Sometimes they'll put people by themselves depending on how, you know, crazy it is. But for the most part, they put 2 people together. And we got lucky that we were both together because they normally never do that. You know, we're both on the same shot. They split us up. But I guess they were limited on spots. And like the shoe was in the medium prison next door. We were at the camp. It was at the prison. So they had only a specific amount of cells for campers. So they put us both together in there. So now we're in there. We're cellies. And we're kind of like, we kind of went through it, you know. The first couple of days was rough. It was rough. Some arguments. Some like, you know, what the fuck type of moments. But, I mean, thankfully, I had already developed the structure that I had in prison, you know, because, you know, obviously we skipped through a lot. But while I was there for that 1.5 years, I was nonstop. You know, from the second I woke up to the second I go to sleep, you know, it was my journal that I was writing every single day. I even actually started learning to write with my left hand. So, you know, like one day I would write my journal, right hand uppercase, all caps. Then the next day, right hand, all lowercase. Then right hand cursive. Then the next day, left hand, all caps. Then the next day, left hand, lowercase. Then the next day, left hand, cursive. And then I would do that mainly for the brain game, you know, for the exercise for my mind. Reading, you know, I was reading every single day. At that point, I had read like, you know, 30-something books up until that point. Obviously working out. I was training a lot of inmates when I was in there. You know, so I had developed the structure. And it was funny because my first cellie, when he saw how I was living, he had been down 4 years. So he always told me, he's like, bro, you just got here. He's like, you're going to burn out. Just watch. He's like, give it like a year or two. You're not going to be living like this anymore. Little did he know, I'm still living like that today. To this day, I'm still living like that. But yeah, no. So luckily, I was able to develop like the structure that I had. And when I went to the shoe, I kept it. You know, we ended up spending 2 months in solitary confinement. But for me, those 2 months I spent there was probably the most spiritual growth that I have ever achieved in any 2-month span. You know, we were confined to a room about, you know, the size of these 3 chairs, probably doubled. It's lots slimmer, you know, just a bunk bed, the shower, and the toilet. A little bit of space, probably around like this, to be able to do anything. But like we always say, perspective is everything. You know, so we did what we could with the time that we had in there. You know, we were locked in there 24 hours a day. And I took the same routines that I was doing and put them in there. Did it more because I had so much more time. So in the shoe, I was doing yoga twice a day. I started doing breathing techniques twice a day, pranayama. I started doing meditating twice a day. And it was like 30-minute meditations. Like I would meditate for 20, 30 minutes at a time. We were reading. So they would have a book cart that would come around. We would get a book or 2 books, and then we'd have to like swap them like that. But what me and my boy would do is we'd read out loud. So he would read 1 chapter. I would read 1 chapter. He would read 1 chapter. Like that, you know, it's actually really good for you to read out loud. You know, it's another brain game. It's really, really beneficial. And we'd read books like that. You know, we'd go through stories and stuff like that. And sometimes we'd even do accents. Like we did the whole Game of Thrones, one of the Game of Thrones books. And like depending on who it was, we'd put the accent to it, you know, just having fun in there. And then we were also working out, like with what? With whatever we could. We were doing a lot of calisthenics. You know, we were working out. We were, and then they gave us 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But what we would do is we would separate each meal into 2 meals. So we would get breakfast, eat half of it, and then save the other half so that we can continue the same diet. So we can continue eating 6 times a day. We would get the milk. So we would start with the milk and cereal because it was the easiest thing. Then we'd get the milk carton, open it, and then put the rest of the food in the milk carton. And like that, we'd save it with the fork because we always have to give the trays back. Give the trays back, and we did that for every single meal. So like that, we're still eating 6 times a day, even though they're, you know, small, shitty meals. But like that, we'd still keep the diet. And we were working out 5 to 6 days a week, you know? And yeah, I mean, imagine 2 months, all day, every day, 24 hours a day in a room.
Bro, you must have came out so ripped. Like,
I mean, not really, because the workouts still weren't that
weren't that
intense.
good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're working out, doing dips on the side of the bed, half-ass pull-ups
with
off
all the
thing.
calisthenics, so you must have done a shitload of push-ups, a shitload of sit-ups.
Push-ups. Yeah, it wasn't crazy or anything like that, but we were still getting it in, you know? And again, what I was saying in the beginning, how the growth that I achieved in there was crazy, you know, because I jam-packed what it might take someone 10 years to do into 2 months. You know, the amount of meditation and yoga and all that stuff that I was doing every single day was crazy. And the books that I read like, I can't remember how many books, but we read a bunch of books in there.
Right. And
you know me, I like personal growth books. Although with him, we were doing a lot of novels too, just to pass time, you know. Novels are more like watching a TV, like watching a movie. But
so you do 60 days in there, and then they ship you.
Yeah, it was
to another
56 days to be exact, and then they ship us. And I always told my boy, I'm like, look, if we get sent to the same prison, this was meant to be, because that's something they never do. Like we're both in the same disciplinary write-up in the same cell. They always split them up. Like right before us, these 4 guys had gotten caught smoking cigarettes in the bathroom. They sent all 4 of them to 4 different prisons. That's what they do. They're not going to put you guys in the same prison. So once they got us for transfer and they packed us out, we were both going to Coleman, to Yazoo. We both saw that we were going to the same prison, and I turned to him and I said, yo, this is a sign from God. Like this never happens. You know what I mean? Like this is meant to be. Like we got to keep doing the music. We got to keep doing this thing. And then we end up going through transfer. You know, and
But now they do the whole crazy, like, right? Like sending you everywhere.
Yeah. No, this transit was it was fucked up. We took the bus to Atlanta, and these buses are small. You know, and I'm not the biggest dude, so even for me, it's small. So imagine a dude who's 6-something like that. They're like, you know, super cramped up in there. And we took the bus to Atlanta. In Atlanta, we were there for like 2 weeks. Then we took the plane to OKC. Then in OKC, we're there for months. But in OKC, we got split up. We got split up in OKC to different units. Spent my time there, spent my time there. Then we reconnected back in Yazoo. But that whole transit was like 2 months, or like a month and a half. And then we got to Yazoo, my second destination. And again, a year and a half. I spent a year and a half my first. Remember how I told you how my whole life has been in year and a half, 2-year segments? We spent a year and a half in that first prison, and then I got to Yazoo. And then, that's the next chapter.
All right, guys, taking a quick break from the podcast to talk to you about Gus Villa Jewelry. Yo, let's be real here for a second. If you're rocking plain jewelry in Miami, of all places, you are doing it 100% wrong, my boy. Step your game up with Gus Villa Jewelry, the plug for real Cuban link gold and silver chains. And of course, the cleanest Rolexes in all of Miami. This isn't factory made or watered down or any of that stuff. This is high quality, custom, handmade stuff that shines from here to the moon. It turns heads, starts conversations, and makes you look fresh. Gus has something that'll level up your whole vibe. And because you're locked in here with us at Honor Among Thieves Podcast, you're getting a hookup. Use the promo code Montana at checkout. Get 5% off your entire order. That's right, 5% off. Go check them out at gusvillajewelry.com or pull up on them in the Diamond District down here in downtown Miami. gusvillajewelry.com. Again, that's gusvillajewelry.com. And tell them your boy Montana sent you. Gus Villa Jewelry. Now back to the podcast. So, as we all know, they call it Yazoo, the zoo. It's given that name for a reason.
Yeah. It's wide open. It's a low, so it's a step above the camps. It's a higher security. You know, it's not the same. It's not free range. You can't just walk around everywhere. Like, they got COs in the units. You know, you have certain times where you can walk the last, like, 5 minutes of every hour. Everything was much more strict, like double, triple fence, barbed wire, like, and a lot more aggressive people there. You know, it was a little bit different, you know, or a lot of bit different. But it's funny because when we were in transit, when we were in Atlanta, me and Eli, you know, we're just hanging out talking, and there was this one guy who had just come from there. So he's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And we told him we're going to Yazoo. He's like, "Oh, Yazoo is sweet. Why?" And then he's like, "Bro, it's wide open. You get whatever drugs you want. You can smoke this." And me and Eli looking at you like, "Bro, we're the fuck? Like, we're trying to stay away from all that stuff." I'm like, "All right, this is going to be a test." You know what I mean? Because, like, that's the last thing we wanted. You know, to go to a place where everyone's drinking and smoking and just being wide open. But little do we know, we get there, and that place was wide open. They call it the zoo for a reason. Just wide open, like the cafeteria. Everyone's just, all the kitchen workers are on the side selling their own trays for stamps. You know, you go to the units, everyone's, you know, at night smoking, drinking every single night. It was like it was a madhouse.
It's funny because whenever you tell people that there's drugs in prison, they're like, what? What
Yeah, they can't believe that shit.
Like,
they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, bro, prison is a lot more wide open than you think.
Yazoo must have been like Gotham City, bro.
Nah,
From the stories I've heard, it's wild.
Yeah, it was crazy. But, I mean, we were only there for a month before the pandemic hit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I didn't even get to experience it much.
So what was the pandemic like in prison? Because I missed that part of prison.
The pandemic was fucking crazy. But before we get there, so I had a month there, and I just want to say this because, so you know how I just spent the last 4 months in transit, and this is just something that I've been preaching now so much, now obviously years later that I've been through this, how important it is to grow mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, and how it relates to everything else you do in life. You know, this is one of the things I try to teach anyone who's close to me, because I felt it specifically in this situation. So I just got to Yazoo after being 4 months in transit. 2 of those months I was in solitary confinement. I hadn't played basketball for 4 or 5 months, right? When I got to Yazoo, the very first game I played basketball, I was 2 for 2. I was seeing the game completely different. I was like, analyzing things differently than I had ever done. And mind you, I've been playing basketball my whole life. But I started thinking about it. I'm like, holy shit. All of the personal growth that I did in the shoe, those 2 months that I spent in the shoe, meditating, doing yoga, reading, writing, all this personal growth that I did, even though I wasn't even thinking about basketball, I wasn't training basketball, nothing had to do with basketball. Now 4 months, 5 months had passed by and I play basketball and I'm playing better than I've ever played. It was just crazy, and so many people don't understand that concept. They think that to get better at something, you have to do that one thing in order to get better at it. When in reality, it's not like that. The more you level up yourself, the more you elevate yourself, the better you're going to get at what you want to do. And that right there is a perfect example. So I get there, I'm start playing basketball, start getting out, but then again happened. A month later, lockdown. We got there in February, March, lockdown. So, and that month that we had was actually pretty cool. Me and Eli got to play with the band. Like we went zero, again, you know how we are, like we kind of went 0 to 100 there. We started getting in with the sports, started getting in with the music, and then shut down. So we weren't able to really experience, because when I first got there, I'm thinking, okay, this is a huge prison, 2,000 inmates. What does that mean? More sports, more music. The music department there was badass. They had a bunch of bands. They had concerts. They had a bunch of amazing musicians, a bunch of amazing equipment. I'm thinking they had a gym. They had all these things that I'm like, okay, now it's time to level up for real. You guys had me in this small little prison. Now you guys brought me to this big prison. Now it's time for me to really level up. And then, boom, the pandemic.
So walk me through, like, what was it like the day the pandemic hit in prison? What was that like? Like, what happened in Yazoo?
So it wasn't like a day, it was like little by little, like, okay, restrictions. They started doing restrictions. And we started seeing in the news of things spreading and stuff. And it was like, okay, you can only go to the rec yard certain hours. Then like certain units can only go. So it was like little by little. It wasn't an all at one type of thing. It started off with that, like restricted recreation. So like these units can go at this time, these units at this time, these units at this time, lunch the same way. Everything was restricted until maybe like 3 or 4 weeks of that, and then completely closed down. Completely closed down. Everyone was locked in their units. And then we spent like about a year.
Was it like a 23-hour lockdown?
24.
You never left your cell?
No. Well, I mean, the cell, but they're open cells there.
So you never left your unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never left the unit. We didn't see
Still rough, though.
Yeah, we didn't see the sun. There were times within that, because it was probably like a little bit over a year that we were completely locked down. But throughout, like after like 7 months, because you know how it was in the pandemic, they would always say, okay, we're about to open up now. And then that time comes, no, we got to do another, infection, this, that, another 2 months. No, we're about to open up now. Shit, we're about to open up. No, another 2 months. Like it just kept dragging and dragging. But there were certain times where they'd start opening up rec for like an hour a day. Each unit go out for 1 hour. And then you see, finally they get some sunlight after like 8 months of not seeing the sun. I actually I got the fattest I've ever been in my life in that moment. I got the most obese I've ever been in my entire life during the pandemic.
You and the majority of the world.
Yeah, but I mean, it's because I was stuck in a unit.
Yeah, of course.
I was still working out. So I had a little muscle, but me and the crew I was hanging out with would eat whatever. It's not the healthiest food there. It's a bunch of processed food. So we're eating all this processed food all day, every day. So, but yeah, and then my unit was rough. We actually had a guy who died.
You had a guy who died during the pandemic in prison?
Yeah.
Wow.
That guy in my unit. It was so fucked up because it was the guards who were bringing it to us. They could have handled the situation so much different. They could have done it to like keep the guards at least protected, to not bring it into us and let us keep functioning. There's so many things that could have happened, but they were completely reckless. Everyone in our prison got sick. People in our prison died. There was a guy in my unit. We went like 2 weeks where our unit was completely infested. Like I would walk down the halls and there are people in their beds curled up, coughing, just coughing, shivering like that. It was like fucked up. It was bad. And then there was this one guy who had it for like 2 weeks. And then they finally took him and he wasn't even that old. He was probably in his late 30s, early 40s. But he had bronchitis or like a breathing problem, a lung problem. Then they took him to the hospital and he died. But it was 2 weeks after he had been sick. Like bedridden sick for 2 weeks. Yeah, it was a lot of irresponsible stuff that was going on during the pandemic.
Nuts, bro.
I got COVID a couple times.
How long were you guys on full lockdown like that before in
A
prison?
year.
A whole year?
Yeah, like I said, we'll have little spurts where we might go out for a little bit, but then
Right.
then they shut it down again.
And then little by little it started opening up again?
Well, no, I was there again for a year and a half. You know, it always comes back around. I was there for a year and a half, and then I got transferred to another prison. My points, because they do it every 18 months, you get your points back down, you get transferred. I got transferred to Coleman. It's funny because actually I had gone in to see my counselor, and I wanted her to request to go to Miami. And then once I went there, she actually looked and she's like, actually, you're going to Coleman. We already put you in because we're trying to get people out of here. But by that time, it was still locked down. There were certain restrictions were starting to open, but it still wasn't like open. And it had already been a year and a half that I've been there, like 14 months or 16 months. So then, yeah, I ended up going through that whole transit process all over again. But it was to Coleman. And Coleman, it was a women's camp.
And it got converted into a men's
It
camp.
got converted to a men's camp. So it ended up being, I was one of the first like 100 people there. And it's crazy because I feel like I manifested what I had wanted to go there. You know, like the whole like, so I want to, at least, I mean, since we've talked so much about my prison time, I want to talk a little bit about like the manifesting that's happened for me in prison. You know, as you know, I ended up reading 100 books, or technically 99, but it's easier to say 100. 99 books, probably over 60% of them were personal growth and spirituality books. And I applied them to my life. As you know, that's like the most important thing. You have so many people out here who are reading books, who are going to seminars, and they know, but do they really know? You know, like they're not applying it to their life. You know, and that's the main part. And everything you do, in diet and change and anything you do, you can know all these things, but if you're not applying it to your life on a daily basis, you're not going to see any results. So that was the most important thing. You know, I went into prison and we've spoken about this before. I killed myself. You know, I killed who I thought that I was, because we all have this attachment to who we are and what we know. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's a little skewed. You know, sometimes it's biased to our environment, to our family, to our friends, to the experiences that we were exposed to growing up, when there's billions of others' experiences out there. So when I had first got to prison, I thought to myself, I'm like, why am I here? You know, there's obviously a reason I'm here, spiritually, you know, to the deeper level. Yeah, I'm technically here because this guy snitched and this guy did that and this guy, you know, but why am I really here? Why 5 years later do I go into prison to something I did 5 years before and get 11 years? So that's when I'm like, you know what? Fuck what I know. Let me just start at scratch again. Let me start at zero. And that's when I started reading from day one, like I said, and I started, you know, taking in all this information that I was taking in, and most importantly, applying it to my life. You know, and it was cool because a lot of these personal growth books I was reading, actually, there were things that did correlate with the things that I already had believed in, or things that I already thought were real. But now I'm learning so many new things about manifestation, about spirituality, you know, the laws of success, you know, daily habits, all these type of things that I'm reading. And I'm like, oh shit. And I start applying into my life. And not only do I apply into my life, you see the results instant. The results are instant. Like you start seeing things change, and you start seeing all these signs and all these coincidences happen. You know, one of the very first ones that I had was back in my first prison in Edgefield. I remember I was walking down the hallway, and a Cuban guy gave me a scripture. You know, he was just walking around with little scriptures. And then he gave me the scripture, and I read it, and it said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." John, whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I read that. I'm like, all right, cool. I put it in my back pocket. That same day, a little bit after, I go to the quiet room. There's a little room that they have that was part of my routine, where I'd go there every day right before 4 p.m. count, and I'd read. So I'm reading this book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Great book.
Yeah. And yeah, he's
phenomenal.
yeah, I read The Power of Now first, and then
Also
A
very
New
good.
Earth is like the
Continuation.
sequel to that. So I'm reading this, and I'll never forget, page 43, he starts explaining the Bible scripture blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I'm like, I grab it. I'm like, what the fuck? So I keep reading whatever. It's count time. I go to count time. After count, I run to this guy, Lewis. I run to him. I'm like, yo, and he's a Spanish guy. I'm like, yo, these scriptures, are they all different or they're the same? He's like, no, they're all completely different. He had a stack of like 500, all completely different. And the one that he gave me
Was the one in the book?
was the only one in the
Crazy.
book. It's not like the book was describing a bunch of scriptures. It was the only one that I read on the exact same day that he gave it to me. You know, and there's little type of coincidences like that that just kept happening over and over and over again. Another one, we're in the shoe, and you know, I spent the 2 months in the shoe. We're in the shoe, and they have commissary there, but like not a real commissary. You buy a couple of things that pointless, deodorant, whatever, toiletries. So the commissary guy was coming around. Or actually, my bad. The night before, we're reading books. Remember how I told you me and Eli would read books? So we were reading a book, and that book we were reading was a memoir of, can't remember her name, but it was a memoir of a girl actress. And in one of the very first pages, it talks about how when she was a young girl, she would walk the streets of New York listening to Menudo on her track, on her disc tape or whatever. And Menudo, I haven't heard of Menudo in God knows how long, 20 years. Like, you know, the Spanish band Menudo. I never heard of Menudo. The very next day, the commissary is coming out. And then me and Eli are singing. You know, we're singing. The commissary guy's coming up, and he's looking into the thing, and he calls us. He's like, yo, Menudo. I'm like, what? He's like, y'all are Menudo. I'm like, no, bro. I started tripping out. I'm like, I tell Eli, I'm like, bro, what are the odds that just last night we're reading this? This is the first time I hear of Menudo in forever, and the very next day, the CEO comes and say we're Menudo. You know, like, it was just nonstop. I remember when we were at Yazoo, when we got to Yazoo, when we were still open, there was this one time that, so we would grab the guitars and just play like in the gym in the little corner. And there was this one Cuban guy from Miami who knew us, he heard us. And one day we're practicing, and he comes up to us and he's like, hey, do you guys have any spiritual songs? And we're like, I mean, not really. We have this song called Family, you know, the first song we ever wrote. And it talks about family being away and missing. He's like, oh, do you mind playing it for our prayer circle? I'm like, sure. So we go out to the rec yard. It's a group of like maybe 6, 7 guys. And we play the song Family for them. And they loved it. They loved it. They're all clapping. They're like, oh my God, bro, sing another one, sing another one. Then we sing Rich Life. They loved it again. Another one. We sing Dear Mom. They loved it again. So then they go to break off to do their prayer circle. Now they invited us, but we were like, no, it's okay. They go do the prayer circle. Then me and my boy are here talking to another musician. The guy who leads the prayer circle runs to us after they finish. He's like, G. He's like, you're not going to believe this. He had a Bible, but it wasn't a Bible. It was like a daily, like how every day it has like a different.
Daily devotional.
Yeah. And he opened it to that exact day. And he's like, read it. And I read it. And it said that day, the angels were going to come from the heavens and sing for them. Bro, I got chills. I literally got chills. I looked at Eli. I'm like, what? He's like, bro, that was you guys. You guys came to us to sing for us. I was tripping, bro. I was tripping. I'm like, it's just, and the list goes on and on. You know, I'm telling you a few that right now I can think of at the top of my head.
Top of your head, of course. Yeah.
But it was so crazy how much it happened. Like that, these crazy coincidences and alignment was just happening left and right. And if you know anything about, you know, the spirituality and how it's taught and stuff, there's no such thing as coincidence. You know, the universe is by design. You know, and the more you start seeing these coincidences, it's just the universe showing you that you're in alignment,
100%.
that you're doing what you were meant to be doing. So then, you know, fast forward to when I'm getting transferred to Coleman, I remember imagining how I wanted it to be. You know, I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, I want to go to Coleman. Like, I'm going to be one of the first people there, hopefully. So, you know, there's probably going to be opportunities there. I want to be in the rec. You know, I want to work recreation. I want to be in charge of the music. I want to be in charge of the sports. You know, I'm thinking like, I want to have a window cell room. Like, these were all things that I was thinking before I went, like imagining, like visualizing. I was visualizing myself, you know, with my cell in the window. I was visualizing myself running the sports, visualizing myself running the music, all these type of stuff. So I go through the whole transit process, the whole transfer process. It's That one was a little quicker. That one was probably like a month because they had to do a quarantine before. We did like a 21-day quarantine. Then we transferred. It took like a week, or actually no, my bad. They did a 21-day quarantine, and I took one bus straight there. The worst bus ride of my life. It was like 16 hours.
16 hours and
14
like all
hours.
shackled up?
Yeah,
Oh
14,
my
16
God.
hours in a little thing. And the bus driver had the AC freezing on purpose. People are screaming, "Yo, put that shit down, bro!" Like we're all freezing our ass off. It was torture. But torture is like training. Yeah, a day what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And once you learn to really like control your mind, you can just get through anything. So anyway, we get to Coleman. We get there, like I said, I was probably one of the first 100 people there. They had one unit filled already. They had 2 units kind of filled. Or no, I was in the second unit. There was only 1 unit filled, and I was already in the second unit. And so yeah, I get there. We're in Coleman. Coleman was nice. It used to be a female camp, and it's wide open. There's no fences. There's nothing. It's wide open. The beds are nice. Like these are the best beds that I've ever been, because there were still the women's beds, and it sucks that they treat them so much better than they treat us. They actually had like spring beds. Imagine for the last 3 years, I've been sleeping on these little fucking foam mats, and then finally I get to a prison that has a spring mattress. You can imagine I'm there like bouncing up and down and shit. I'm like, yes, what is this? We have a pillow. I hadn't seen a fucking pillow in 3 years. I'm like, what? We got pillow. We got a fucking spring bed. It was like, I remember when I first got there, and then the first meal I had there too. I'm like, oh no, they've overdone it, bro. They've outdone it. This place is fucking heaven compared to what I came from, But then back to the whole manifestation thing that I was talking about, how I was visualizing kind of how I wanted things to go. After, I passed, because we get there, we have to go through a quarantine there as well. Then after the quarantine there, we get transferred to our cell, to our unit. The very next day, I go to recreation. When I go to recreation, I meet the rec CO. And from the beginning, we just clicked. He also went to Full Sail University. I went to Full Sail University. He went to Full Sail University. We had the same style of music. He was this cool, young Puerto Rican American type dude from New York. And we were just kicking it. He's like, bro. And since they had just started, they hadn't really started the music department. So right then and there, I told him, like, look, I'm interested, I'm interested in being in charge of the music and even in charge of the sports. I've been playing sports in every prison I've been at. I can do this. And then he said, let me get back to you. And then like a day later, he gave me the job. So then I ended up being in charge of the sports. I ended up being in charge of the music. And then, prison time there was sweet.
Before everybody started getting there, I remember, man, was his name Ronnie? I remember.
Ronnie.
The white dude that was in F2 with me,
Yeah.
remember? He told me that when you guys first got there, there was like, you guys did like a parade for New Year's. Is that true, bro?
Yeah. So the first New Year's Eve that we had there, and this is crazy too, because I'm coming from places that are a lot stricter. And even the camp that I was at was still strict compared to this place. The thing about it too is that this place was ran by Puerto Ricans. So every prison you go to is ran by a certain race. The first prison I went to actually was kind of pretty divided evenly. It was an RDAP prison. So, it was kind of pretty divided evenly. The Yazoo was more blacks. It's in Mississippi. We go to Coleman,
Yeah, it's all
and
Puerto
it's
Rican.
over 50% Puerto Rican. And, the Puerto Ricans are a little wild in there. They know how to party.
There's some wild motherfuckers in there.
So that first, bro, it's crazy. I'll never forget that first New Year's. And at this point, I was sober. I hadn't been doing anything. I went sober in there for a few years. I wasn't drinking or smoking or doing anything in there. But I was still hanging out with the people. Of course, I get in with everyone playing sports and everything. And I'm cool with the Puerto Ricans. And I'll never forget, I'm in my cell trying to go to bed, because I wasn't celebrating New Year's like that. People were all drinking and stuff. And then I hear it was already like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was up for New Year's, but then after that I go to sleep. It's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I hear a bunch of noise. And I get out of my bed and I look over the wall, and it's a parade. It's literally a fucking parade. There was a guy who was there from the outside.
That's hilarious.
There was a guy there in jeans. There was a guy there in jeans and a regular shirt. A friend of one of the Puerto Ricans. They're out from the outside in this prison. They're fucking marching around each unit. So they're coming right in front of my shit. It's a group of maybe probably 30, 40 people. All of them with little cups, little styrofoam cups or drinks, waving flags with tambourines, fucking drums, screaming, dancing. And every unit they go, they get bigger. They get stronger and stronger because then people would join them. Then like blacks would join. Everyone's there like dancing and shit. It was wild. And then they would literally just leave outside and go upstairs. So whoever CO was in the cameras sees a fucking parade of 50 people all going upstairs to the next one, to the next unit. And then like that, they go across to the next unit, back down. And they went around like twice, bro.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
man.
it was wild. I couldn't believe. I mean, bro, we're in fucking prison.
I missed the golden era by this much of Coleman. I caught the shit, the fucking shakedown.
Yeah, no. When you got there, it really got fucked
it was
up.
bullshit.
It really, 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 really got fucked up.
So you have all this fun. I guess we'll get to the part where we met. So we meet January of 2023 in Coleman. By then, the golden era of Coleman was coming to a close. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end.
Yeah, for real. Now, you have no idea how wide open it was. It was like, it was super wide open. People were bringing in Chinese food, McDonald's, Burger King almost every single night. People had shoes from the outside, jewelry. Like, it was like...
I know you can't deny or confirm this, but I'll tell you a story I heard from that era of Coleman. I heard a dude paid his cousin 5 G's to come in and pose as him for the weekend, and he left to go be with his girlfriend for the whole weekend. I believe it, because Coleman, back then, because I caught a glimpse of it, like the first few weeks I was there was wild. It was still open. But
bro, when I talk about wild, there was a time that 11 people left.
11 people left the camp?
Yeah, for the night. There was one moment where 11 of them in the middle of the night ran out, had fun, came back before the morning count. A group of 11.
Crazy.
That's how wide open it was, man.
But how did they not get caught like with the midnight counts and shit when people...
Their boys would cross over.
Bro, that's crazy.
Yeah, they had a system, bro. Whatever they did, they had a system. But the thing is, they took advantage.
Yeah, they got too much.
They took way too much advantage. Like,
Bro.
get a finger, you take an arm. They were doing good getting out, but then they started going out every single day. Every single day, just leaving, getting packages, bringing in stuff every single day. Now they're doing shakedowns and finding... Bro, it got to the point they were bringing in air fryers, they were bringing in grills, they were bringing in everything.
They would find 100 cell phones every time they did a shakedown.
Literally, 200. It was crazy. So it got out of hand. And then that's when, they had to impose.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just not for nothing, but the Puerto Ricans are wild, bro. Those guys are wild. Like, I met some wild motherfuckers in my time, and that's nothing. That's just a camp. I can imagine them at like a medium or a low. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we meet Ross and the funky bunch.
Yeah. When you came along, I mean, it was the last 4 months of my sentence.
Right.
Before that had been, so again, I ended up spending 2 years at Coleman. I was a year and a half in the first place, a year and a half in the second place, and 2 years at Coleman. In Coleman, it was different. Obviously, I didn't have my boy that I had been with for the first while.
Right.
Music, I was into it. I was in charge of the music, but there still wasn't really a music scene there.
No, Rec was closed like most of the time.
Exactly. Rec was closed on and off. All the sports things I was doing was really on the side because Rec was always closed. But I continued my routine.
You remember, because we did this, and I've posted this clip before, but I want to hear your perspective of that morning. You remember the morning we found Dan in his bed?
Dead?
He was dead. Yeah. You remember that morning?
How could I forget? It's the first time and only time I've seen a dead person.
So I've told the story on my podcast before, but I've always said I was with my friend G. So I want you to tell it from your perspective, whatever you remember from that day. So what I remember is, like, my morning routine, I would always come back from work and I'd wake you up and then we would talk or whatever, hang out. So tell me what you remember. Yeah,
so I mean, I was sleeping. At that time I was a head orderly. I had a little more, had a little bit more of a lenient schedule, a flexible schedule. And I usually slept until like 10, 10:30 when you guys were coming back for your first break. So you would come to my cell, I'd get up and we'd have our little, 15-minute 20-minute conversations before lunch. That's when we'd talk about everything, the books we were reading, the growth we were going through. And that specific day, you're there hanging out, and Edison was there hanging out.
His celly, what was the other old guy's name? I forgot. Dave.
Dave was the one who came to us.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
just
yeah.
you and me in the unit. It was you and me. I think
and
a couple.
Edison,
a couple
Edison was
other
in his
people
room. Yeah.
were like around, and Dave stops at our door, and he's just looking at me, and we're both looking, and he's like super like
shook up. Man.
confused. Yeah, like you could see he's like turning pale. He's like, "Gee," and I'm like, "What's up, Dave?" He's like, "I think my celly's dead." I'm like, "What?" I'm like,
I remember you and me looked at each other like,
yeah, I'm like, I mean, how do you know? Like, what? He's like, well, I shook him and he's ice cold and he doesn't move. I'm like, yeah. And that's when Edison came in and I'm like, bro, Edison, I think this guy's like, I didn't know what the fuck to do, bro.
I remember I went to go. I'm like, I'm gonna go get a guard, and you grab me. You're like, no, Dave, you go.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah. You don't want to be a part of any of that type of stuff, bro.
Yeah.
You know, a dead person. Like, I remember I got up and I looked and this dude went inside.
Right.
And he's shaking him and he's looking at me. He's like, bro, he's dead. He's like, yeah, he's dead. I'm like, bro.
What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I came back. He came out. I'm like, Dave, you got to go get someone. Dave went, told the administration.
Bro.
They came in. They rolled out. The craziest part about it is they cleared the units. We're all outside in the library. We're all outside in the chapel area. They come in. They bring the paramedics. They put the dead body on the gurney. They're wheeling it out. And as they're wheeling it out of the unit, they turn and the dead body falls off, bro. Like,
I remember that like it was yesterday.
that shit was crazy. We're all looking, peeking. We're like, what's going on? They're coming out and they turn the corner and all of a sudden, boop.
My first thought, as soon as they dropped the guy's body, I was like, bro, any of us could die today or tomorrow or whatever. And that's us. Like,
No, and the crazy part about it is he went to medical the night before.
you're right.
He went to medical the day
remember.
before. They told him, just go sleep it off, and he ends up dying. They end up getting a huge lawsuit from that.
I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, his family
Yeah.
sued the
Of course.
Good
Of
for them,
course. What the fuck? He was constantly going to medical, telling him about problems, but sometimes the medical there is the worst thing in the world.
Horrible.
They really don't give a fuck.
You remember the what was it? The carbon monoxide thing? Bro.
Well, that was kind of when I was already left.
Nah,
Yeah, that was kind of when I already left.
that all
I
fell
didn't-
through.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the lawyers ended up not doing much. But then, so I remember you left in April of 2023.
Yeah.
You were like the only real friend I made there. So it was hard. It's a bittersweet thing when your friends
Yeah, when your
leave
friends
prison
leave, yeah.
because it's like you're happy for them because they're going home, but at the same time it's like fuck, now I'm alone. You know?
Now we had developed a close bond, like
We had, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when we first met, we actually weren't even that cool. Remember, we met through a mutual friend.
We met through Jose, yeah.
Yeah, we met through a mutual friend. And, I had my little group of people there. I was a head orderly, my group of friends. We were doing stuff, and you would just come every once in a while.
Right. I was
And
still in
then,
F2.
yeah, you'd come every once in a
Bro,
while.
I remember when I fucking had to tuck my tail between my legs and ask you for help. That I'll never forget. So they took my celly Jack Sparrow from my room
Yeah.
and they put him in F1. And then they shoved some random ass gay dude from some fucking, I don't know where. And I was like, bro, am I really going to stay here with some fucking random ass guy? Like, so I had to go and find you and be like, bro, can you please move me? Like, they just shoved some random ass fucking guy. And then that's when I moved to the unit.
I said, I got you. Yeah. So, I was a head orderly, so people would always come to me for
course.
help with that type of stuff, moving people, units.
Mm.
You had come to me. I went, spoke to the
man.
counselor. We made it happen. I got you a cell kind of relatively close to me in the same
Yeah.
aisle as me.
I remember.
And that's when we kind of, actually became friends because I saw you when you were moving and I forgot what book it was that you had. Was it The Power of Now? It was one of these type of books that you had on your desk. And as I was walking and you were there like fixing your cell,
Yeah.
I looked, I'm like, damn, you read? And you're like, yeah.
And then I
I've been
showed you all
reading."
the books I had been reading.
Yeah,
Like, what
and
the
then
fuck?
bro, I'm like, oh shit, I read this one, I read this one, I
Yeah.
read this one. Damn, this is crazy. And then,
I even remember the book you gave me that day. It was The Book of Secrets by Deepak Chopra.
yeah.
It's one of the best books I've ever read.
Speaking of the Book of Secrets, I got one of the best lessons of life there and of us as humans, and it speaks of us being a reflection of the planet and the planet being a reflection of the universe,
Right.
which is what I believe is what us being the son of God is, or us being created like God.
In the image of
In
God.
the image of God. It correlates to that. So it speaks of like how, for instance, the planet, or even smaller, us, our bodies, how do our bodies work? We have a bunch of cells, and the cells kind of work together inside with our skin, with everything to kind of keep us functioning, right? Keep us going. And what happens when our cells start working against each other? That's when you have viruses, diseases, illnesses, right? And then your body does whatever it can to try to fix that until eventually your body can even die if your cells aren't working together. And in that same concept, the planet works exactly the same way. You know, the planet is just a magnified version of our body. And us humans are the cells. The same cells we have in our body, for this body, we are the cells of the planet.
Right.
You know, and that's why the more we work together, the more in harmony we are. But we live in a day and age where everyone's against each other. You know, everyone's fighting against each other. You know, everyone's draining the planet of resources. And what is the planet doing? The planet is fighting back. The same way our body would be fighting back if our cells weren't working together. Now the planet is fighting back. You know, that's why we're having more hurricanes, more fires, more tsunamis, more natural disasters. Why? Because the planet is trying to fight back from everything that we're doing to it. And then even in the grander scheme, that's how the universe is too. You know, it's all mere reflections of each other. And that's one of the greatest lessons I learned from that book. And that's why one of my favorite quotes is, "He who seeks to understand the universe understands nothing, but he who seeks to understand only himself understands the entire universe." Because the way the universe works, the way the planet works, is the exact same way we work.
Right. My brother, you have a hell of a story. I appreciate you coming on here and telling it. I'm honored that I'm the first person to bring your story to the world through podcasting. This is a kind of surreal moment for me because, you know, you were one of the people I would tell about. My dream is to build this podcast and bring all you guys on my platform and tell all these stories and make money from YouTube. And that's what I'm going to do when I get out. Mm-hmm. And like to bring you, of all people here, who was my best friend in prison and one of my best friends in life, like to have these cameras and these lights and to be doing this with you, it's like, it's crazy, bro. I can't even put it into words.
Yeah,
I really can't.
It is crazy. We used to speak about this stuff when we were locked
100%.
up.
100%. You used to talk about how you were going to make it in music, and I used to talk about how I was going to podcast. And
that's crazy. We spent, 4 months together when we were in there, from meeting you through those books. Then you started training with me.
Yeah.
We started training together. We started doing yoga. You know, at first you were like, but it was something you were open to.
Yeah.
Because you, even though you had the short sentence you had, you were always open to bettering yourself. You were always open to
100%.
the growth, you know, personal growth. You were going to use that as a training camp. And that's, I think, why we connected at such a deep level.
I think so.
Because I had just spent the last 4.5 years doing that. You know, and then those last 4 months, you know, we were able to really write it out like that. We did yoga every day. We worked out every day. You know, you also had lost some weight while you were in there. You continued to read. You know, you even started playing some sports, even though you're not, the best. I mean, the most athletic, but you started coming out. I got you playing soccer,
handball.
You know, softball, handball. Yeah. You know, we were doing stuff, and we connected, bro. We definitely connected at a deeper level because, you know, in prison, there's not many people doing what we're doing. You know, there's not, and it's crazy because people are always like, "Oh yeah, well, of course you did that in prison. There's nothing else to do." I'm like, that's not how it is, man.
Not how it is.
Everyone goes into prison with the same habits they had before.
100%.
You know, people are still in there dealing and wheeling and doing crime and, you know, killing time. You know, no one's in there really taking advantage of the time that they have to really grow.
Right.
You know, and that's what I did. You know, that's what it was for me. And you were one of the few, if not one of the only people that I saw that was doing it in the full respect that I was. You know, because there's many people in there who are growing physically, right, or who are finding God, or who are, you know, trying certain things. But there's very few, if any, that are doing all of it. You know, growing in the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. You know, I was blessed to have the perspective that I had going in to be able to do what I did when I was in prison. And then meeting you and seeing what you did, you know, obviously I felt blessed that I found someone that was doing it. And even though we only spent 4 months, I felt like, you know, we both benefited from those 4 months that we had.
I agree, brother. It was, I, like you, tell everybody that I don't know where I'd be if I didn't go to prison. Like, prison is the best thing that ever happened to me, down to, like, the people I met, like yourself and Ross, and to the books I was able to read, the knowledge I was able to gain, the time by myself where, like, I was very able to just clear my mind and, like, really get back and, like, being present and, like, everything together, even the horrible moments in there.
Yeah.
And now I'm glad, you know, the world brought us together. You have a friend in me for the rest of your life. Count on me for whatever you need. And I'm excited, man, because this is
it's definitely just the beginning.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, now what's been happening for me the last. So I mean, I got out April.
April 2023. Yep.
You know, I
So it's
got
been
out
2.5 years.
by the fucking
Grace of God.
craziest grace
Yeah.
of God. You know, I got sentenced to 11 years. I'm thinking I had to do 8.5 technically. 8.5 was what I had to do. And then the pandemic, you know, they had the
CARES Act.
CARES Act that was getting people out early depending on certain criterias. And at first I didn't fit any of those criterias. You know, I had no idea that I was going to get out. But I'm a firm believer that because of the lifestyle that I lived when I was in there, the way that I was just helping people, practicing unconditional love, treating every single person equal, working on myself every single day, you know, all the things, the daily habits I was doing, I feel like that's why God and the universe blessed me the way it did. And then a month before it ended, remember it ended in May, I got out in April. And it was one of those things that just also happened so crazy coincidental, like with the numbers and all these crazy coincidences that just started aligning and happening. And all of a sudden, 6 to 8 weeks later, I'm gone. I'm gone and I'm free, but not completely free, you know, because I had to get out on home confinement, you know, and
But then you got clemency.
Another crazy thing, you know, I got out of home confinement. I am supposed to do 3.5 years on home confinement. That was like the restriction. You know, I'm able to get out home, but now I'm on home confinement. Have an ankle monitor on. I can only go to work and I can only go to the gym for an hour and that's it. You know, groceries once a month, haircut once a month. That's it. I can't go anywhere. So I'm stuck at home. But again, story of my life, I continue the routine. I continue the structure that I had developed while I was in there, that I started the very first day I went to prison till to this very day, that I'm still doing the same things. And it's crazy because I always told myself when I was in prison, my goal is to live the lifestyle I live in prison on the outside. Obviously, with the freedom we have on the outside, you know, it's completely different. But being able to work on myself, being able to yoga, meditate, read, write, study, grow, make music. And so yeah, I had the 3.5 years. I had the 3.5 years in home confinement. But as we all know, before President Biden was terminated, or once he finished his term, he did a single day largest clemency in the history of the United States. He gave 1,500 inmates a clemency, and I was one of those 1,500 inmates. You know, it was like one day to the next. You know, I had no idea. I thought I was going to do 3.5 years in home confinement, but I was always hopeful. You know, I always was positive. Again, I spent the exact same time doing I was in there, doing at my house. Yoga twice a day, meditating twice a day, reading, helping people, training people. Like, that's what I spent all my time doing. The whole music thing, of course. And yeah, I was blessed, you know, from one day to the next. It was right before Christmas, right before this last Christmas. It was like the best Christmas present I could have ever asked for. And I'll never forget that day. Jeremy calls me at 6 o'clock in the morning, or like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm dead asleep. He's like, yo, G, you're free. You're free. I'm like, bro, what do you mean I'm free? He's like, bro, you're free. Bro, I say, take your ankle monitor off, bro. You're free, bro. President Biden just signed a clemency for 1,500 inmates. I'm like, bro, like, I thought he was fucking around with me, you know? Like, I thought he was playing. Then I go, I look, I do my research, and I see that he did the clemency, but like, there's no names or anything. Like, it's just, he did clemency. I'm like, okay. I'm like, bro, I'm not free till I see it. I go back to sleep. I wake up around 9 or 10 a.m. to work. And then at noon, I'll never forget, at noon, he sends me a screenshot of my name in the clemency list. And that right there is the only other time that I've ever cried because of the situation, bro. I started bawling. I literally go on my bed, on my knees, and I just started like crying. I couldn't believe it. You know, I had 11 years. I got out in 5 years. Now I had 3.5 years. I got out in 1.5 years. Like, I just couldn't believe it. You know, I'm even like now getting emotional thinking about it. It was crazy. And then the process took like a week. You know, they had to transfer it to the halfway house, happen. But yeah, I was free. And then that was when things really took off. You know, like, we haven't really spoken much about the music here, but like, that's when things took off with my music. You know, because when I was on home confinement, you know, I was throwing house shows. You know, I was confined to my home. I couldn't leave. So I wanted to showcase the music that I had learned in prison, the songs I had learned in prison. So I would gut out my living room, rent 30 to 40 chairs, put the backyard, a little like party set up, you know, the charcuterie boards, the bartender, all that stuff, and invite people to my house. And each month I was doing that with my boy, the music duo that I was in. We were showcasing our music, and we would invite other artists to come perform. And that's when, you know, I met some of the most amazing artists who are currently part of my band, you know, because it ended up being the same artists were coming to my house. So we kind of created a little family. And then once I finally got my ankle monitor off, Evans, it was in my band. He was like, look, we should start a band. And then that's when we started a band. And from then it started off as, me, Jenny, Evans, Alice, Eli. It was the original 5 of the Marina Effect. And, but then, things happen and there's no ill will towards anyone. Obviously people have their own dreams and desires that they want to pursue, but that ended up coming down to just me, Jenny, and Evans. And the last 6 months, the last 7-8 months has literally been the best 7 months of my life. I never imagined. I'm not going to say I never imagined, because I actually dislike when people say that, because if you never imagined, it wouldn't have happened. Obviously I imagined. Obviously I imagined this would be happening. Did I know it was going to happen as fast as it's happened? No, I didn't. But I feel like it's the universe paying me back for all the hard work that I've done for the last 7 years.
100%, man. So typically I wrap up asking the same few questions. So I'll go ahead and I'll shoot. So number one, I know the answer to this, but what's next for you?
What's next is the music. We've been 0 to 100. We started the band back in January. In March, we won the Battle of the Bands Hard Rock Cafe. In July, we won the Battle of the Bands at Meisner Park in Boca Raton. We've been performing since March, when it ended up becoming us 3, the 3 of the Marina Effect. We've been performing every single weekend, 2-3 times a week, plus open mics, paid gigs, free gigs, whatever it is, just developing ourselves, really getting better at performing, developing our sound, our music. And that's what's next, man. That is what God has showed me. Going to prison, I did miss one thing. When I first went to prison, I went in completely open. I had no idea what I was going to be. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I took the approach of letting go, which a lot of people have difficulty with. Once you let go and let God kind of guide you into where you're supposed to be, things really will start working out for you. And I let go. I decided to just help people. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to prison and become the ultimate life coach. I wanted to learn everything I could about personal training, about spirituality, about personal growth, and come out and just help people change their lives. If I could find peace in prison, why can't you find peace in the free world? Because at the end of the day, we're all in some sort of prison. That's just the reality of the fact. So wait.
What's next for you?
So yeah, right now what's next is just the music, man. The music is where God showed me that things are supposed to be. Oh yeah, my bad. I had lost train of thought.
You're good.
But so yeah, that's why I feel like the whole music thing happened to me in prison, because I decided that, what, I'm going to help people, which is what all of us should be doing. We should all be helping each other. And then the universe started just sending me things. He sent me, one of my best friends to do music with. He started sending me opportunities, sending me this, sending me that. Then I got out, the same thing. I was throwing these house shows and just things were just so successful, and like everything just started evolving in an organic way. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted. It was more like what was meant for me to do. Yep. And then now with even the whole music thing, it's been 10 months and we're making noise in Miami. There's so many people asking about us, talking about us. We're the only band to do a 2-hour set at the Hard Rock Cafe of 100% original music. We've stayed true to who we are. We've stayed true to our message. It's not just about the music, it's about the lifestyle. It's about bettering yourself, getting into the best shape of your life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and that'll correlate to the music. We actually don't rehearse as much as people think we do. Every time people see us, they're like, oh my God, you probably rehearsed so much because you guys just keep getting better week after week. And we just, nod our head and say, yeah, for sure. But in reality, that's not the truth. The truth is we work so hard on ourselves. We work so hard on ourselves every single day that we're just getting naturally better at music, because that's how, it all works. So yeah, music is next, man. I'm just pursuing this and riding the wave and seeing where it goes.
I love that, brother. So next question is, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone who just helped change people's lives. I always say that, like, if I die tomorrow, I'd be happy. Because, like, give me a second. Let me get some water, bro.
You're good. it's funny because as your friend, I know that there's no truer statement. Like you really would like if you die tomorrow, you did it.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I was in prison. You've seen the people I've helped. You've read my character references, and then even since I've been out, you've seen the impact I've had on people. That's good enough for me. You know, as long as I can change one person's life, and I know I've already changed a bunch. You know, so I know for sure that's what I'm gonna be remembered as. You know, the guy who went through prison, went through what he went through, and was able to help just change so many people's lives through his story, through his message, through his determination, his ambition, all that stuff, you know?
I was there to witness it, man. So I can tell you firsthand that's definitely how people are gonna remember you. 2 more questions. Do you believe in redemption?
I don't really think about it like that, you know? I don't think about redemption or redeeming myself for any type of anything. You know, I'm just doing what feels right. You know, that's one thing, and I know you know that about me. I don't really think a lot, as crazy as that sounds. You know, I try to be as present as I can. Prison really helped me with that. You know, spending days and hours and months and years meditating and doing yoga, I've learned really to like still my mind. And I don't, it's funny because this past weekend I was at a yoga retreat and we would play games sometimes in the group of like asking questions. Like, oh, what's in your bucket list? Or what are things or places you want to visit or things? And people would ask me questions and I was always blank. I was always like, I don't really think about that type of stuff. They're like, what? I'm like, really, I don't. I'm constantly thinking of the Marina effect. I'm constantly thinking of personal growth. That's literally what my entire day and mind is consumed of. Just becoming a better person and helping my friends become better people. And building this band and the music. And being as present as possible, because at the end of the day, we're our most powerful selves when we're present. We're our most powerful selves when our mind is completely still. You know, and I just wanted to say one more thing about that mind and mindfulness and stillness, because it's an example I just gave this weekend. A lot of people suffer of overthinking. You know, there's a lot of people who are just thinking nonstop. Their mind is just on 1,000. And the advice I always give them, or the analogy I always give them, is think of an ocean or think of a lake or any body of water. Now, what happens when that lake is completely turbulent and they're just waves crashing into each other, right? What happens when you throw a rock into that lake? Nothing. Nothing is going to happen because there's so much going on in that lake. Now, what happens when that lake is completely still? When that lake is completely still, you can throw the smallest of a pebble and it's going to have a rippling effect. And that's exactly how the mind works. That's exactly how the mind works. The more still your mind is, the more powerful each thought you have is. And the more you can manifest things into your life. So yeah, back to the question. I don't really think too much about things like that.
My brother, appreciate your time. Thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. This is epic. You know, this is the first time I've done something like this. The first time. Yeah. I mean, we spoke about it all the time, and I've been free now technically 10 months. And we spoke about doing it earlier and getting on it earlier, but the time wasn't right.
Timing was right.
The time wasn't right back then. You know, I was still in the process of building the band. Now, you know, we're in a different level. Things are going differently. Things are going better than ever, better than I could have imagined. And I felt like this was the right time.
I agree, brother. All righty, guys. Oh, of course. How could I forget? How can people connect with you?
Oh, people can connect with me at G The Original Guru on Instagram. And my band is We Are the Marina Effect. And right now I'm pretty much only on Instagram. Only on Instagram at G The Original Guru. Now I'm planning to do a social media push in November. That's one of the reasons I'm also on this podcast. You know, I intend to start doing more podcasts, you know, with Ross Mandel and other people coming up soon, at least once a month. And I'm going to open more socials. You know, I'm going to get a TikTok. You know, I'll be getting whatever other socials there are. You know, I'm not too big into social media, YouTube, you know, all those type of stuff. But as of now, it's on Instagram, G The Original Guru. My band is We Are the Marina Effect altogether. We Are the Marina Effect.
Sweet. Alrighty, guys. So that was another episode of Honor Among Thieves. Push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
FBI, open up!
The FBI swarming a Miami house and taking a man into custody in the area of Southwest.
So say goodnight to the bad guy.
The agency says the 28-year-old was picked up at